What if you could stand before a door that hasn't been opened in thousands of years? A barrier separating our world from secrets that could completely reshape our understanding of human history. That tantalizing possibility isn't just the stuff of adventure films. It's the reality facing archaeologists today as they encounter sealed chambers in ancient ruins across our planet. These mysterious portals represent some of the most compelling unsolved puzzles in modern science, holding within their silent darkness the potential to rewrite entire chapters of our collective past. From the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the dense jungles of Central America, these enigmatic spaces have defied every attempt at exploration, preserving their secrets through centuries of human progress and technological advancement. What makes these 21 sealed chambers so extraordinary isn't just their age or their hidden locations, it's the profound questions they pose about our relationship with history itself. Each chamber represents a delicate balance between our burning curiosity to know what lies within and the sobering responsibility to preserve these time capsules for future generations. They might contain untouched royal tombs with artifacts that could illuminate lost civilizations, or perhaps ancient libraries holding philosophical texts that disappeared from human knowledge millennia ago. The possibilities are as endless as they are thrilling, touching upon our deepest human instincts for discovery and understanding. Yet with each potential revelation comes equally significant risks, the possibility that opening these spaces could destroy precisely what we hope to preserve. Today we embark on an extraordinary journey to explore these 21 sealed chambers that have resisted modern exploration, understanding why scientists approach them with such extreme caution. We'll travel across continents and through time, from hidden Egyptian tombs to lost South American temples, examining the sophisticated technologies being developed to study these spaces without intrusion. We'll meet the archaeologists who must weigh their professional curiosity against ethical considerations and practical preservation challenges, and we'll discover why sometimes the greatest respect we can show history is to leave its doors unopened. Prepare to uncover the fascinating stories behind these ancient sealed chambers and the important reasons they remain among archaeology's most carefully guarded mysteries. There's something fundamentally human about our fascination with sealed doors and hidden spaces. This deep-seated curiosity isn't just a modern phenomenon, it's woven into the very fabric of our psychology, tracing back to our earliest ancestors who wondered what lay beyond the next valley or across the distant mountains. Sealed ancient chambers represent the ultimate manifestation of this timeless urge to explore, serving as physical embodiments of history's greatest unanswered questions. They stand as silent challenges across centuries, daring us to discover what previous generations deliberately concealed or simply forgot. Unlike typical archaeological sites that have been touched by time or human interference, these completely sealed environments offer the rare promise of pristine preservation, a perfect snapshot of a moment frozen in time, waiting to reveal its secrets to those patient enough to listen. What makes these chambers so compelling is their unique combination of mystery and potential. Each sealed door represents both a question and a potential answer, a puzzle and its solution waiting just beyond our reach. For scientists, they offer the possibility of completely untouched context artifacts exactly where they were left, environmental conditions preserved just as the ancient inhabitants intended, and organic materials that might have survived the centuries protected from air, light, and human disturbance. For the public, they tap into our love of stories and discovery, evoking the same sense of wonder we feel when reading about lost cities or buried treasure. This dual appeal, scientific and romantic, creates a powerful cultural fascination that transcends academic interest and touches something deeper in our collective imagination. The allure extends beyond mere curiosity about contents to the stories these spaces represent. A sealed chamber isn't just a room. It's a decision made centuries or millennia ago by people who believed something was worth protecting, concealing, or preserving for reasons we can only guess at. Were they hiding treasures from invaders, protecting sacred knowledge for future generations, preserving the resting places of important figures? The mystery of why these chambers were sealed is often as compelling as what they might contain. This historical narrative adds layers of meaning to the physical space, transforming simple stone and mortar into chapters of human history waiting to be read. Modern technology has only intensified this fascination while simultaneously reinforcing why caution remains essential. Advanced imaging techniques like ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, and muon tomography allow us to peer through stone and earth to detect voids and structures without physical intrusion. These technological glimpses often raise more questions than they answer, showing us the shape of something hidden without revealing its nature or purpose. The tension between what we can detect and what remains truly unknown creates a powerful dynamic that keeps both researchers and the public eagerly awaiting each new development, while understanding why full exploration must wait for the right methods and moment. This enduring captivation speaks to something fundamental about how we relate to our past and our future. Sealed chambers represent both the limits of our current knowledge and the promise of future discovery. They remind us that despite all our technological advances and archaeological achievements, there are still mysteries that resist our understanding, still doors that remain closed to us. This humility in the face of history's secrets is perhaps one of the most valuable aspects of these enigmatic spaces. They keep us wondering, questioning, and recognizing that the past still has lessons to teach us if we're willing to approach it with respect, patience, and appropriate caution. Our journey into these sealed ancient spaces begins with what many consider the ultimate archaeological prize, the untouched tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This isn't just any burial site. It's the centerpiece of a sprawling underground city designed to accompany the emperor into the afterlife, guarded by the now famous terracotta army that stood forgotten for over 2 millennia before its accidental discovery by farmers in 1974. While the thousands of life-sized clay soldiers have captivated the world, they merely represent the outer perimeter of protection for what lies at the heart of this complex, the emperor's main burial chamber, which has remained sealed for more than 2,200 years. The scale of this undertaking is almost unimaginable. Historical records suggest over 700,000 workers labored for decades to create this subterranean empire, all to honor the man who first unified China under a single rule. What makes this particular sealed chamber so extraordinary aren't just the historical accounts of its contents, but the very real scientific concerns that keep it closed. Ancient texts written by historian Sima Qian describe a breathtaking interior with miniature replicas of palaces and pavilions, ceilings inlaid with pearls to represent the night sky, and mechanical crossbows rigged to fire at any intruder. Most intriguing is the description of rivers and seas of mercury, a claim that modern science has partially verified through soil samples showing exceptionally high mercury concentrations around the tomb mound. This presents a formidable challenge: potential toxic exposure for researchers, and the near certainty that any breach would cause immediate deterioration of organic materials that have been preserved in this unique environment for centuries. The mercury itself might have served both practical and symbolic purposes, possibly intended to simulate the legendary rivers of China, or even for its preservative qualities. but today it represents a significant barrier to exploration. The technological solutions being considered for investigating this space reflect how far archaeology has evolved from the treasure-hunting approaches of previous centuries. Scientists are developing non-invasive methods that could potentially map the interior without physical entry, including advanced ground-penetrating radar, muon tomography that uses cosmic rays to create three-dimensional images of dense structures, and environmental sensors that could analyze the atmosphere within the chamber through microscopic fissures. The ethical considerations extend beyond mere preservation. There's growing recognition that this tomb holds profound cultural significance for the Chinese people, and any investigation must balance scientific curiosity with respect for national heritage. The Terracotta Army discovery itself serves as a cautionary tale. When those figures were first exposed to air after 2 millennia underground, their original vibrant paint flaked off within minutes, a loss that haunts conservators to this day and informs the extremely cautious approach to the main burial chamber. This sealed space represents more than just an archaeological site. It's a time capsule from one of history's most transformative periods, potentially containing artifacts, texts, and information that could revolutionize our understanding of early Chinese civilization. The first emperor standardized everything from currency to writing systems to axle widths, and his tomb might hold the original versions of these revolutionary standards. There could be entire libraries of bamboo scrolls preserving lost knowledge, exquisite artworks unlike anything previously discovered, or technological marvels that would rewrite our understanding of ancient engineering. Yet the very potential of these discoveries is what makes researchers so hesitant, the knowledge that we only get one chance to do this correctly, and that future technologies will likely provide better methods for exploration and preservation. The tomb stands as both an invitation and a warning, a reminder that some doors require not just courage to open, but wisdom to know when to leave them closed. While the tomb of China's first emperor represents a grand imperial secret, our next sealed chamber offers a more intimate mystery hidden within one of archaeology's most famous discoveries. The burial place of Tutankhamun, discovered by Howard Carter in 1922, has long been celebrated as the only nearly intact pharaonic tomb ever found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. For nearly a century, this glittering treasure chamber seemed to have given up all its secrets until modern technology revealed we might have been looking at only part of the story. Ground-penetrating radar scans conducted in 2015 detected something that sent shockwaves through the Egyptology community, evidence of a previously unknown void behind the north wall of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. This hidden space, measuring approximately 2 meters by 10 meters, appears to be a corridor-like chamber that was deliberately sealed and forgotten, possibly containing what many researchers believe could be the most significant archaeological discovery of the 21st century. The possibility that this secret chamber might hold the lost burial of Nefertiti has transformed this from a scientific curiosity into a potential historical revolution. Nefertiti, the powerful queen of Egypt's 18th dynasty and stepmother to Tutankhamun, disappeared from historical records under mysterious circumstances. Some Egyptologists theorize she may have ruled as pharaoh after her husband Akhenaten's death, which would make her burial one of immense importance. The location and orientation of Tutankhamun's tomb has always been unusual for a pharaoh, smaller and less elaborate than other royal tombs, leading to speculation that he might have been buried in what was originally the antechamber to Nefertiti's larger tomb. This theory suggests that when the young king died unexpectedly, his officials might have hastily appropriated part of his stepmother's prepared burial complex, sealing off her chamber to hide it from tomb robbers and leaving us with both tombs preserved together. This extraordinary possibility is exactly why scientists proceed with such deliberate caution. The famous wall paintings in Tutankhamun's burial chamber depict the boy king's journey to the afterlife, and they represent some of the most delicate and significant artwork from ancient Egypt. Any physical intrusion into the adjacent space could disrupt the delicate microclimate that has preserved these paintings for over 3,000 years. Changes in humidity, temperature, or air composition could cause irreversible damage to the pigments or the plaster surfaces they're painted on. The tomb has already suffered from the effects of tourism and previous excavations, with visible damage to some areas that underscores how fragile this environment truly is. Researchers remember all too well what happened when King Tut's tomb was first opened. The beautiful floral wreaths placed on his coffin crumbled to dust within hours of exposure to air, a poignant reminder of how quickly ancient materials can deteriorate when their preserved environment is disturbed. Beyond the paintings, the entire structural integrity of the tomb must be considered. The Valley of the Kings consists of limestone that has been fractured by earthquakes over millennia, and any excavation work could potentially destabilize the surrounding rock. The burial chamber itself was carved directly into the bedrock, and damaging this structure would mean losing not just the potential new discovery, but the existing tomb that has captivated the world for generations. Egyptian authorities have made it clear that they will not permit any physical breaching of the wall until they are absolutely certain it can be done safely, prioritizing preservation over potential discovery in a significant shift from archaeology's earlier approaches. The technological response to this challenge has been remarkable. International teams are developing increasingly sophisticated non-invasive methods to study the hidden space without ever breaking through the wall. Advanced thermal imaging can detect subtle temperature differences that might indicate the composition of materials beyond the barrier. Muon tomography, which uses cosmic rays to create three-dimensional images of dense structures, is being refined to provide clearer pictures of the void's size and contents. Sensitive radar equipment can now distinguish between different materials, potentially identifying the presence of metal, organic matter, or even the specific shapes of artifacts. These technologies are advancing rapidly, with each new development bringing us closer to understanding what lies beyond that wall, while still respecting the integrity of the ancient structure. The ethical considerations extend beyond mere preservation science. For the Egyptian people, these archaeological sites represent not just historical treasures but vital cultural heritage and national pride. The Supreme Council of Antiquities must balance international scientific interest with their responsibility to protect Egypt's patrimony for future generations. There are also spiritual considerations. These were sacred burial places, and many feel they should be disturbed only when absolutely necessary and with appropriate respect. The potential discovery of Nefertiti's tomb would be monumental, but not at the cost of damaging existing artifacts or disrespecting the ancient Egyptians' intentions for their eternal resting places. This careful, methodical approach represents a new era in archaeology, one where the questions we ask are as important as the answers we seek, and where patience is considered a scientific virtue rather than a limitation. The sealed chamber behind Tutankhamun's wall reminds us that even our most famous discoveries may have more secrets to reveal, but that those revelations must come through respect, caution, and technological innovation rather than rushed excavation. It stands as a testament to how far we've come from the days when archaeology meant simply breaking through walls to see what lay beyond, and instead embraces the sophisticated dance of discovery that characterizes 21st century science. Moving from the dry desert climates of Egypt to the humid rainforests of Central America presents an entirely different set of challenges for archaeologists, where the sealed crypts beneath Mayan temples represent a race against time and the elements. These subterranean spaces, hidden deep within the foundations of towering pyramids at sites like Palenque, Tikal, and Calakmul, were designed as the final resting places for divine kings, rulers who served as intermediaries between the human world and the gods. Unlike the stone-sealed tombs of Egypt, these chambers exist in a constant battle with a living environment, a tropical climate where humidity hovers near 100%. Plant roots seek out any moisture, and microorganisms thrive in the darkness. This creates a preservation paradox. While the complete sealing of these crypts has protected their contents for over 1,000 years, any break in that seal could trigger a rapid chain of deterioration that would destroy organic materials within days or even hours. The structural concerns surrounding these chambers are particularly daunting. Mayan pyramids were not built as solid stone monuments, but as intricate layered constructions of rubble, limestone cement, and carefully placed facing stones. Over centuries, water infiltration, root systems, and seismic activity have created invisible weaknesses within these structures. Archaeologists face the terrifying possibility that disturbing one stone to access a sealed crypt could trigger a cascade failure, potentially causing entire sections of a pyramid to collapse. This isn't merely theoretical at several sites. Early excavation attempts resulted in partial structural failures that required extensive stabilization efforts. The Maya themselves understood this fragility. Many of their sealed chambers were intentionally filled with carefully packed rubble and sealed with corbelled arches designed to distribute weight away from the burial chamber itself. Modern researchers must respect this ancient engineering while recognizing that 13 centuries of environmental pressure have made these structures even more delicate than when they were first built. What might be lost in such a collapse goes beyond architectural damage to include irreplaceable historical information. These crypts potentially contain organic materials that simply don't survive in other archaeological contexts: elaborate textile wrappings, wooden scepters, painted manuscripts, feather headdresses, and rubber offerings that would provide unprecedented insight into Mayan material culture. The famous tomb of Pakal the Great at Palenque revealed a breathtaking jade mosaic death mask and numerous artifacts, but archaeologists suspect that even more delicate materials deteriorated during the excavation process in the 1950s despite the team's best efforts. Today's researchers operate with the heartbreaking knowledge that previous generations likely lost significant information simply because they lacked the technology to understand what was happening to these materials the moment they were exposed to different atmospheric conditions. This understanding has driven a revolution in how archaeologists approach these sealed spaces. Current research focuses on remote sensing technologies that can map chambers without physical intrusion. Ground-penetrating radar has been particularly valuable, sending electromagnetic pulses into the stone and reading the returning signals to create three-dimensional maps of voids and density variations. At the Temple of the Inscriptions in Palenque, this technology has revealed potential additional chambers that may have been missed in earlier excavations. Electrical resistivity tomography is another promising approach, measuring how electrical currents travel through different materials to distinguish between solid stone, empty spaces, and different types of fill material. Perhaps most exciting is the development of micro-environmental monitoring, where scientists drill tiny boreholes just millimeters wide to insert sensors that can measure temperature, humidity, gas composition, and even microbial activity within sealed chambers without significantly disturbing the internal environment. These technological advances are complemented by a growing collaboration with descendant communities. Modern Mayan people maintain cultural and spiritual connections to these ancient sites, and their perspectives on whether and how these chambers should be explored carry significant weight in archaeological decisions. This collaborative approach has led to protocols that prioritize preservation while still allowing for scientific inquiry. In some cases, this might mean using non-invasive technologies to document chambers, but then leaving them completely undisturbed. In others, it might involve extremely limited intervention with continuous environmental monitoring to ensure that any changes can be immediately addressed. The goal is no longer simply to see what's inside, but to preserve these time capsules until technology advances to the point where we can explore them without any risk of loss, a commitment to future generations of both scientists and Mayan communities who rightfully see these sites as part of their living heritage. Beneath the towering majesty of the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan lies a hidden world that continues to defy complete understanding, a labyrinthine network of tunnels and chambers that represents one of Mesoamerica's most carefully guarded secrets. This ancient city, whose name means the place where the gods were created, was already a magnificent ruin when the Aztecs discovered it centuries after its abandonment, and its original builders remain anonymous to this day. The sheer scale of their achievement is staggering. The Pyramid of the Sun stands over 200 feet tall and remains one of the largest structures of its kind in the Western Hemisphere. But it's what lies beneath this monumental architecture that truly captivates archaeologists, a subterranean landscape that may hold the key to understanding why this mysterious metropolis was built and what beliefs drove its creation. The discovery of these hidden spaces represents a triumph of modern physics applied to archaeological questions. Using an innovative technique called muon tomography, scientists have been able to peer deep into the pyramid's solid core without disturbing a single stone. This remarkable method relies on cosmic rays, high-energy particles from space that constantly rain down on Earth. As these muons pass through solid structures, they are absorbed at different rates depending on the density of the material they encounter. By placing sensitive detectors in tunnels beneath the pyramid, researchers can create a detailed map of density variations within the structure, essentially allowing them to see voids and chambers hidden within the ancient masonry. What these scans have revealed is a series of previously unknown spaces, including a substantial chamber located directly beneath the pyramid's apex, a placement that suggests profound ritual significance rather than simple structural necessity. This deliberate concealment by Teotihuacan's builders speaks volumes about their intentions. Unlike chambers that were sealed for protective purposes, these spaces appear to have been ritually closed, perhaps as offerings to deities or as ways to contain powerful spiritual energies. The ancient Mesoamerican world, you often saw caves, tunnels, and underground spaces as entrances to the underworld, realms of both danger and creation. By constructing artificial versions of these sacred landscapes beneath their pyramids, the Teotihuacanos may have been creating permanent portals to the supernatural realm, places where the boundaries between the human and divine worlds could be crossed through proper ritual practice. The careful sealing of these spaces suggests they weren't meant to be reopened, but rather to serve as eternal connections to the otherworld, making modern intrusion not just a technical challenge but potentially a violation of ancient sacred intentions. The preservation concerns at Teotihuacan are particularly complex due to the unique construction methods and materials used by its ancient engineers. The pyramid consists of millions of sun-dried adobe bricks and rubble held together with a type of limestone cement that has developed its own delicate ecosystem over centuries. Within this environment, even the slightest change in humidity or temperature could destabilize the entire structure. The potential for fragile murals painted with mineral pigments on carefully prepared plaster surfaces is especially worrying. Previous excavations at the site have revealed breathtaking examples of Teotihuacan art that deteriorated rapidly upon exposure to air and light, a loss that haunts conservators and informs the current extremely cautious approach to any new exploration. The sealed chambers might contain such artworks in pristine condition, but only if they remain completely untouched by modern environmental conditions. Beyond the artistic considerations, there's the very real risk of structural collapse. The pyramid has stood for nearly 2,000 years, but it exists in an active seismic zone and has suffered damage from both earthquakes and the settling of its massive weight over millennia. Archaeologists must consider that any tunneling or excavation could create unforeseen stress points that might compromise the stability of the entire monument. The use of heavy equipment is out of the question, and even hand tools could disturb carefully balanced sections of the interior. This isn't merely theoretical concern during excavations in the 1970s. Portions of the pyramid's exterior had to be extensively reinforced after unexpected shifting occurred during digging operations, a lesson that remains fresh in the minds of those responsible for the site's preservation today. The potential rewards of exploration must be weighed against these significant risks. The sealed chambers could contain dedicatory offerings that reveal the pyramid's original purpose, perhaps even identifying the deity to whom it was dedicated. They might hold the remains of powerful rulers, though Teotihuacan's leadership structure remains mysterious compared to the more familiar Maya or Aztec systems. Most intriguingly, they could contain symbolic representations of the city's creation mythology, artifacts that might finally help us understand why this particular location was chosen for such an enormous urban undertaking and what cosmological vision inspired its precise alignment with celestial events. The orientation of the city's main avenue, the Street of the Dead, aligns with the Pleiades star cluster as it set on the horizon around the time of the city's founding, suggesting an astronomical significance that might be reflected in whatever lies hidden beneath its largest structure. Current research focuses on refining non-invasive techniques to learn more without physical intrusion. Improved muon detectors with higher resolution capabilities are being developed, potentially allowing researchers to distinguish between different types of materials within the chambers. Thermal imaging conducted at different times of day can reveal how heat moves through the structure, providing clues about the composition and size of hidden spaces. Advanced laser scanning creates incredibly detailed three-dimensional models of known tunnels that might connect to these sealed areas, helping researchers understand the complete underground landscape. This patient, technologically sophisticated approach represents a new paradigm in archaeology, one where the questions we can answer without digging are becoming increasingly sophisticated and revealing. The stewardship of Teotihuacan also involves important ethical considerations for the Mexican government and the local communities who consider the site part of their cultural heritage. Unlike many ancient sites that were abandoned and forgotten, Teotihuacan has maintained continuous spiritual significance for indigenous peoples of the region, some of whom still perform ceremonies at the pyramid. Their perspectives on whether and how these sacred spaces should be explored carry significant weight in decision-making processes. This collaborative approach ensures that any future exploration will balance scientific curiosity with respect for living cultural traditions, recognizing that some mysteries might be meant to remain mysteries, their power residing in their secrecy rather than in their revelation. While the pyramids of Mesoamerica guard their secrets in stone and earth, a different kind of preservation mystery lies buried under the volcanic ash of Italy, where an entire library of ancient knowledge awaits resurrection. The Villa dei Papyri in Herculaneum represents a unique archaeological paradox, a treasure both saved and destroyed by the same catastrophic event. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, this luxurious seaside residence was not simply buried like Pompeii. It was instantly engulfed by a superheated pyroclastic surge that carbonized everything in its path, from wooden furniture to hundreds of precious papyrus scrolls in the owner's extensive library. This instantaneous cooking process, while destroying the organic material, also preserved its form in astonishing detail, creating a collection of scrolls that resemble lumps of charcoal but potentially hold complete texts from Greek and Roman masters that the modern world believed lost forever. The significance of these carbonized scrolls cannot be overstated. This isn't merely about recovering a few additional lines from known authors. It's about the very real possibility of accessing entire libraries of thought that vanished during the Dark Ages. The villa likely belonged to Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesoninus, a Roman statesman and father-in-law to Julius Caesar, who was known as a passionate collector of Greek philosophical texts. His library may contain lost works by Aristotle, whose dialogues on comedy and other subjects were mentioned by ancient sources but never found. There could be complete plays by Sophocles or Euripides, of which we currently possess only a fraction of their total output. The potential for rediscovering scientific texts by pioneers like Democritus, who theorized about atoms centuries before modern science, or medical works that could reshape our understanding of ancient knowledge, makes this collection arguably the most important in the world. Each scroll represents a voice from antiquity that could fundamentally alter our perception of classical thought, literature, and science. This extraordinary potential is precisely why archaeologists approach any new excavation with such extreme trepidation. The existing scrolls discovered in the 18th century were initially handled with methods that now seem heartbreakingly destructive. Early attempts to unroll them resulted in many being completely destroyed, and even the most successful efforts often left the texts fragmented and difficult to read. The carbonized papyrus is incredibly fragile, with the consistency of ash held together by memory. The slightest pressure can cause it to crumble into dust. The ink, made from carbon-based materials like lampblack, has almost identical density to the carbonized papyrus, making it nearly invisible to conventional imaging techniques. The challenge isn't just physical, it's chemical and optical, requiring solutions that simply didn't exist until very recently. The fear of destroying what might be the only copy of a lost masterpiece by Plato or Sappho weighs heavily on every decision made regarding new excavations. The technological breakthroughs happening right now are nothing short of revolutionary, representing a perfect marriage of cutting-edge physics and ancient preservation. The most promising development comes from the field of X-ray phase contrast tomography, a sophisticated imaging technique that can distinguish between the carbon-based ink and the carbonized papyrus by detecting subtle differences in how these materials bend X-rays rather than simply absorbing them. This approach, pioneered by scientists like Dr. Brent Seals at the University of Kentucky, has already successfully read wrapped scrolls from the existing collection without physically touching them. The process involves virtually unrolling the scrolls using complex algorithms that can map the layers of papyrus as they spiral inward, then detecting the text on each layer. This technology is advancing at an astonishing pace, with each iteration providing clearer images and more accurate text recognition, bringing us closer to the day when we can read these ancient works without ever risking their destruction. Beyond reading the known scrolls, there's the tantalizing possibility of additional undiscovered libraries within the unexcavated portions of the villa. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed several anomalies that suggest more rooms may lie buried, potentially containing additional collections of scrolls or even different types of artifacts preserved by the unique volcanic conditions. The challenge of excavating these spaces involves not just the scrolls themselves but the entire environment that has preserved them for nearly 2 millennia. The compacted volcanic material that encases the villa has created a stable microenvironment with consistent temperature and humidity levels. Breaking that seal could introduce oxygen, moisture, and microbial activity that would begin deteriorating materials that have been perfectly preserved since the eruption. Any new excavation would require constructing a climate-controlled environment around the entire site, a massive undertaking that must be meticulously planned and executed. The ethical considerations extend beyond mere preservation science to questions of cultural patrimony and academic access. The scrolls represent a heritage that belongs to all humanity, not just to the institutions that currently house them or the country where they were found. There are ongoing discussions about how any newly discovered texts should be shared with the global academic community and the public, ensuring that the knowledge they contain isn't locked away or limited to a small group of researchers. The potential for these works to reshape our understanding of philosophy, science, and literature makes their responsible stewardship a matter of global importance, requiring international cooperation and transparent protocols for study and publication. This careful, technologically sophisticated approach to the Herculaneum scrolls represents archaeology at its most forward-thinking, where patience and innovation work together to solve problems that would have been impossible just a decade ago. The sealed chambers of the Villa dei Papyri remind us that some of history's greatest treasures require not just discovery but decoding, and that sometimes the most profound revelations come not from breaking through walls but from developing new ways of seeing what already lies before us. They stand as a testament to human curiosity and ingenuity, showing that our desire to understand the past can drive technological progress that benefits both history and future generations. Moving from the volcanic preservation of Herculaneum to the timeless stone of Egypt, we encounter perhaps the most iconic ancient structure on Earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and within its immense bulk, a mystery that has captivated the modern scientific community. This isn't about known chambers like the King's or Queen's chambers, but about the recent, stunning discovery of previously unknown voids hidden deep within the pyramid's core, spaces that have been sealed since the monument was constructed over 4,500 years ago. What makes this discovery so extraordinary is the method of its revelation, not through traditional archaeology, but through cutting-edge particle physics. Using an innovative technique called muon tomography, scientists have essentially used cosmic rays from deep space to create an X-ray of the pyramid's interior, revealing anomalies that suggest the existence of chambers or passages that were never documented in ancient texts and have no known entrances or exits. The discovery process itself reads like a scientific thriller. The Scan Pyramids Project, an international mission launched in 2015, placed sensitive muon detectors in known chambers within the pyramid. These devices track the subatomic muon particles that constantly rain down from Earth's atmosphere, particles that pass through solid objects but are absorbed at different rates depending on the density of the material they encounter. By analyzing where more muons passed through the structure, researchers could map areas of lower density, essentially voids within the stone. The results were staggering. A significant void located above the Grand Gallery, measuring approximately 100 feet long and with a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself, and a smaller void behind the north face of the pyramid. These aren't minor construction gaps. They appear to be deliberate architectural spaces whose purpose remains completely unknown to modern Egyptology. The implications of these hidden chambers are profound, potentially challenging long-held theories about the pyramid's construction and purpose. For centuries, Egyptologists have believed they understood the basic internal layout of the Great Pyramid, but these discoveries suggest there may be entire aspects of the structure that have been hidden from view since its completion. The larger void, sometimes called the Big Void, positioned directly above the Grand Gallery, might represent a relieving chamber designed to distribute the enormous weight of the masonry above away from the gallery below, a sophisticated engineering solution that would demonstrate unexpectedly advanced architectural knowledge. Alternatively, it could be a completely separate chamber containing artifacts, offerings, or even remains related to the pyramid's original purpose. The possibility that these spaces might hold untouched archaeological material from the Fourth Dynasty is both thrilling and daunting for researchers. This tantalizing possibility is exactly why scientists proceed with such deliberate caution. The Great Pyramid isn't just an archaeological site. It's a symbol of human achievement, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a touchstone of Egyptian national identity. Any invasive exploration carries risks that extend far beyond academic concerns. The structural integrity of the pyramid itself is paramount. Drilling or cutting into the stone could potentially weaken areas that have maintained their stability for millennia. The pyramid has already survived earthquakes, climate changes, and even the removal of its outer casing stones. But introducing new access points could create unforeseen stress points or alter the delicate balance of temperature and humidity that has preserved the interior for so long. The potential damage isn't just to the stone itself. Even microscopic changes to the internal environment could affect the preservation of any organic materials that might exist within these sealed spaces. The cultural and ethical considerations are equally significant. For the Egyptian people, the pyramids are more than ancient monuments. They're sacred cultural patrimony that represents their nation's glorious history. The Supreme Council of Antiquities must balance international scientific curiosity with their responsibility to protect these icons for future generations of Egyptians and all humanity. There's also the spiritual dimension. These were funerary monuments intended as eternal resting places, and many feel they should be treated with appropriate respect rather than as scientific curiosities to be dissected. The memory of earlier archaeological expeditions that used destructive methods or removed artifacts without proper context informs the current extremely cautious approach, emphasizing preservation and non-invasive investigation over rapid discovery. The technological response to this challenge has been remarkable, driving innovation in archaeological science. International teams are developing increasingly sophisticated methods to study these voids without physical intrusion. Improved muon tomography with higher resolution detectors is being deployed to create more detailed maps of the void's dimensions and shapes. Infrared thermography conducted at different times of day measures how heat moves through the stone, revealing subtle differences in density and potentially identifying the composition of materials within the voids. Ultrasonic testing and ground-penetrating radar, adapted for use within the pyramid's confined spaces, provide additional data points. Perhaps most intriguing are the developments in miniature robotics. Engineers are designing incredibly small, agile robots that could potentially navigate through existing cracks or tiny boreholes, as small as 3.5 centimeters, to insert cameras and sensors without causing any structural damage. These robotic explorers represent a fascinating convergence of ancient mystery and cutting-edge technology. Earlier this century, a robot named Jedi, after the magician who served Pharaoh Khufu, the pyramid's builder, explored a narrow shaft leading from the queen's chamber and discovered hieroglyphs written in red ochre that hadn't been seen by human eyes in millennia. Future robotic missions could be designed to navigate even more challenging environments, equipped with flexible, snake-like bodies, high-resolution cameras, fiber optic lighting, and even miniature sampling tools that could analyze dust or air particles from within the voids without disturbing the environment. The development of these technologies isn't just about solving one archaeological mystery. It's advancing fields from robotics to materials science to particle physics, demonstrating how the questions posed by ancient structures can drive innovation across multiple disciplines. The collaboration between international scientists and Egyptian authorities represents a model for how such investigations should proceed. The Scan Pyramids project brings together researchers from Japan, France, Canada, and Egypt itself, combining expertise while ensuring Egyptian oversight and leadership. All findings are thoroughly reviewed by the Permanent Committee of the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities before any public announcement, preventing premature speculation and ensuring that cultural sensitivities are respected. This careful, methodical approach may seem slow compared to the pace of modern media, but it reflects a mature understanding that these mysteries have waited over 4 millennia for investigation. They can certainly wait a few more years for the right technology and approach to be developed. What these hidden chambers might eventually reveal extends beyond Egyptology to our broader understanding of human capabilities in the ancient world. The Great Pyramid remains one of the most precisely built structures in history, aligned to true north with astonishing accuracy and constructed with mathematical proportions that continue to intrigue scholars. The discovery of previously unknown internal spaces could provide new insights into how the ancient Egyptians achieved such feats of engineering without modern technology. They might contain construction markers, tools, or even workers' notations that reveal the methods used to build this incredible monument. Alternatively, they could hold ritual objects or texts that shed light on the religious and cosmological beliefs that motivated such an enormous undertaking. The possibility of finding organic materials, perhaps even papyrus fragments from the 4th dynasty, is particularly exciting, as such materials rarely survive from this period and could provide first-hand accounts of the pyramid's construction and purpose. While the pyramids of Egypt stand as isolated monuments to forgotten pharaohs, our next sealed chamber exists beneath one of the world's most vibrant modern cities, where the past literally supports the present. Istanbul, the city that straddles 2 continents, has been the capital of 3 great empires: Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman, each building upon the ruins of its predecessor. This creates an extraordinary archaeological reality. Beneath the bustling streets of a metropolis of over 15 million people lies a hidden world of sealed chambers from the Ottoman era, spaces that have been inaccessible for centuries, not because of ancient curses or technological limitations, but because of the very modern city that has grown above them. These aren't remote ruins in distant deserts. They're time capsules buried directly beneath apartment buildings, mosques, and markets, holding secrets from an empire that once stretched from Vienna to Yemen. The potential contents of these sealed spaces are enough to make historians tremble with anticipation. The Ottoman Empire maintained meticulous records for over 6 centuries, with imperial archives that documented everything from tax collections to military campaigns, from diplomatic correspondence to royal decrees. While many documents were preserved in known collections, numerous accounts speak of additional archives being sealed in underground chambers for protection during times of war or political instability. The possibility that these spaces might contain untouched records from the height of Ottoman power could revolutionize our understanding of this complex multicultural empire. Beyond paperwork, there could be artistic treasures, illuminated manuscripts, ceremonial objects, or even the personal effects of sultans and viziers that were hidden away and never recovered. The cultural significance extends beyond Turkey to all the nations that were once part of the empire, from the Balkans to the Middle East to North Africa, each potentially finding new chapters of their history preserved in these underground chambers. The challenges of accessing these spaces represent a perfect storm of archaeological complications, beginning with the relentless threat of groundwater. Istanbul is surrounded on 3 sides by water, and the water table has been rising for centuries, flooding many underground structures. Any attempt to excavate would require massive pumping operations that could potentially destabilize the foundations of modern buildings above. The soil composition itself presents problems. The city is built on layers of clay, sand, and sedimentary rock that shift with seismic activity and construction vibrations. Then there's the maze of modern infrastructure: sewer lines, electrical conduits, subway tunnels, and fiber optic cables that crisscross the underground landscape, making any excavation potentially disruptive to the city's daily functions. The risk of damaging these vital systems or causing subsidence in the streets above makes urban archaeologists understandably cautious about any exploration attempts. Structural concerns extend beyond mere inconvenience to genuine safety risks. Many of these sealed chambers were constructed as cisterns, storage areas, or secret passages during the Ottoman period, using building techniques that weren't designed to withstand the pressure of modern construction above them. The weight of 20th-century concrete buildings is vastly greater than the wooden structures that existed when these chambers were built. There's also the complex issue of ownership and responsibility. Who would be liable if excavation caused damage to a historical mosque, a modern apartment block, or municipal infrastructure? The legal and insurance implications are so complex that they often deter exploration before it even reaches the planning stage. Archaeologists must navigate not just physical barriers, but a web of regulations, property rights, and liability concerns that make traditional excavation approaches nearly impossible. Political and cultural sensitivities add another layer of complexity to any potential investigation. Istanbul is a city where history is never just history. It's part of living identity, religious heritage, and national pride. The Ottoman chambers might be located beneath functioning mosques, historic markets, or government buildings, making access a delicate matter requiring multiple levels of permission and oversight. There are concerns about how discoveries might be interpreted or used in contemporary political debates about Turkey's Ottoman past and its modern identity. The potential for finding human remains or religious artifacts requires protocols that respect both Islamic traditions and archaeological standards. Any exploration would need to be conducted with transparency and cultural sensitivity, involving not just government agencies but community representatives and religious authorities in the decision-making process. Despite these formidable challenges, technological innovations are offering new ways to study these sealed spaces without physical intrusion. Ground-penetrating radar has become increasingly sophisticated, able to create detailed 3-dimensional maps of underground structures through layers of soil and modern concrete. Electrical resistivity tomography can distinguish between solid rock, empty spaces, and water-filled chambers by measuring how electrical currents travel through different materials. Microgravimetry measures tiny variations in gravity caused by density differences underground, potentially revealing the location and size of voids. Perhaps most promising is the development of robotic crawlers that can navigate through existing sewer systems or utility tunnels to place sensors closer to the target areas, improving imaging resolution without any excavation. The ethical approach to these Ottoman chambers represents a shift in how we value archaeological preservation in urban environments. Rather than seeing them as problems to be solved through excavation, many archaeologists now advocate for documentation through non-invasive means followed by careful monitoring and protection. The knowledge that these spaces exist and are preserved intact may be more valuable than whatever artifacts they contain, ensuring that future generations with better technologies and methodologies will have the opportunity to explore them. This patient approach recognizes that sometimes the greatest archaeological wisdom lies in knowing what not to dig, preserving these time capsules until we can study them without destroying the modern city above or the ancient secrets within. High in the mist-shrouded Andes, where the air grows thin and the clouds cling to mountain peaks, lies one of archaeology's most breathtaking sites, Machu Picchu. This ancient Inca citadel, perched nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, represents not just an architectural marvel but a spiritual landscape where every stone holds meaning. Within its meticulously constructed walls and terraces, several sealed chambers have intrigued researchers for decades, spaces that were deliberately closed by their builders and have remained untouched for over 5 centuries. Unlike the grand imperial tombs of Egypt or the library chambers of Herculaneum, these Inca spaces embody a different kind of mystery, one deeply connected to living cultural traditions, delicate environmental balance, and architectural techniques so advanced they continue to baffle modern engineers. The potential significance of these sealed chambers extends far beyond their possible contents. Machu Picchu was likely constructed as a royal estate or sacred religious site for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti in the 15th century, and its strategic placement between 2 prominent peaks suggests profound cosmological significance in the Inca worldview. The sealed chambers might contain the remains of high-status individuals, perhaps even royal family members or high priests, accompanied by ceremonial offerings that could illuminate Inca spiritual practices. Given the Incas' sophisticated metalworking skills, there could be exquisite gold and silver artifacts that survived the Spanish conquest untouched. More importantly, these spaces might hold organic materials rarely preserved in other contexts, textiles woven with complex patterns that conveyed meaning, quipu knot systems that served as recording devices, or food offerings that would reveal details about Inca agriculture and ritual practices. Each sealed chamber represents a potential window into a civilization that left no written records, making material artifacts our only direct connection to their beliefs and daily lives. What makes the approach to these chambers particularly noteworthy is how Peruvian authorities and archaeologists have established a paradigm of conservation that balances scientific curiosity with profound respect for both structural preservation and cultural heritage. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture, in collaboration with institutions like the Decentralized Culture Directorate of Cusco, has implemented policies that prioritize non-invasive research and extremely limited physical intervention. This conservative stance stems from hard-learned lessons at other sites where excavation caused unintended damage, as well as from a growing recognition that future technologies will likely provide better methods for investigation. The management plan for Machu Picchu emphasizes monitoring and maintenance over exploration, recognizing that the site's value as a UNESCO World Heritage location depends on its preservation for future generations rather than immediate discovery of its secrets. The structural concerns at Machu Picchu are uniquely complex due to the Incas' extraordinary stoneworking techniques. The buildings were constructed using a method called ashlar, where stones are cut to fit together without mortar so precisely that not even a knife blade can be inserted between them. This engineering marvel has allowed the structures to withstand earthquakes that have destroyed later Spanish constructions, but it also creates delicate stability relationships between stones. Any attempt to open sealed chambers could disrupt these carefully balanced arrangements, potentially causing sections of walls to shift or collapse. The foundation systems beneath the structures are equally sophisticated, with deep drainage systems and terraces that prevent water accumulation and soil erosion. Archaeologists must consider that disturbing one area could affect water flow patterns that have been functioning perfectly for centuries, potentially undermining the very foundations they seek to preserve. Beyond the physical structure, there are vital cultural and spiritual considerations that guide the cautious approach. For many indigenous Quechua people in the region, Machu Picchu remains a sacred site connected to their ancestors and living traditions. The concept of disturbing burial sites or ceremonial spaces carries significant ethical weight, and there's growing recognition within the archaeological community that scientific inquiry should not override cultural respect and sensitivity. The Peruvian government has increasingly involved local communities in decisions about the site's management, acknowledging that Machu Picchu belongs not just to humanity as a whole, but specifically to the descendants of those who built it. This collaborative approach has led to protocols that favor preservation and respectful observation over invasive investigation, ensuring that any future exploration would only occur with community support and using methods that minimize disturbance. The environmental conditions at Machu Picchu present another layer of preservation challenges that make archaeologists exceptionally cautious. The high-altitude environment features intense ultraviolet radiation, dramatic temperature fluctuations between day and night, and humidity levels that can vary rapidly as clouds envelop the site. These conditions create a particularly hostile environment for organic materials that might have been preserved within sealed chambers. A textile that has survived 5 centuries in a stable, dark, dry environment could begin to deteriorate within hours of exposure to the Andean sun and humidity. Even the act of creating an opening could introduce microbial life, insects, or environmental changes that would trigger irreversible damage. The chambers themselves might maintain unique microclimates that have preserved materials in surprising ways, but breaching that equilibrium could destroy precisely what researchers hope to study. Current research approaches reflect this multifaceted caution while still seeking to understand what lies within these sealed spaces. Archaeologists are employing increasingly sophisticated non-invasive technologies to study the chambers without physical intrusion. Ground-penetrating radar has been used to map subsurface features, though the irregular terrain and stone construction present challenges for this technology. Thermal imaging conducted at different times of day can reveal temperature variations that suggest the size and composition of hidden spaces. Drone-based photogrammetry creates incredibly detailed 3-dimensional models of the entire site, allowing researchers to study architectural patterns that might indicate the purpose of sealed areas. Perhaps most importantly, ongoing studies of Inca construction techniques and cosmological principles provide contextual understanding that helps interpret what these chambers might contain based on their location, orientation, and relationship to other structures. The stewardship of Machu Picchu also involves managing the pressures of modern tourism while protecting the site's integrity. With over 1 million visitors annually, the sheer volume of human presence creates preservation challenges that must be carefully managed. The foot traffic, humidity from breathing, and even microscopic skin particles carried on air currents can gradually affect the ancient structures and any sealed chambers within them. Conservation efforts include carefully controlling visitor routes, limiting access to certain areas, and continuously monitoring the impact of tourism on the site's preservation. Any decision to explore sealed chambers would have to consider not just the immediate archaeological impact, but the long-term effects of making new areas accessible to visitors, potentially creating preservation problems that extend far beyond the initial excavation. This comprehensive approach to Machu Picchu's sealed chambers represents a maturation of archaeological philosophy, where respect for cultural heritage, structural preservation, and environmental balance take precedence over the desire for immediate discovery. The chambers stand as reminders that some mysteries are meant to be preserved, their power residing in their secrecy and in the patience they require from those who would understand them. They challenge us to develop better technologies, more respectful methodologies, and deeper collaborations with descendant communities, approaches that might eventually allow us to understand their secrets without violating the integrity of the site or the values of those who hold it sacred. In this high-altitude sanctuary where the stones seem to whisper with ancient voices, the greatest respect we can offer is sometimes to listen without demanding answers, to wonder without insisting on revelation, preserving both the mystery and the monument for those who will follow us. Beneath the modern streets of Rome lies a hidden city of the dead that stretches for hundreds of miles, an intricate labyrinth of tunnels and burial chambers known as the Catacombs, where early Christians buried their loved ones and practiced their faith in secret. Within this sprawling underground network, numerous chambers remain sealed behind ancient brickwork or later interventions, preserving within their silent darkness artifacts and information from Christianity's formative years. These aren't mere burial niches, but potentially significant spaces that could contain the resting places of martyrs, early Christian symbols painted on walls by believers who risked persecution, or even caches of religious objects hidden during times of danger. The historical significance of these spaces cannot be overstated. They represent the very physical roots of Western Christianity, places where the faithful gathered to honor their dead and maintain their beliefs despite constant threat from Roman authorities. The Catholic Church's approach to these sealed chambers reflects a complex balance between historical curiosity and spiritual stewardship. As the primary custodian of many catacomb sites, the Church generally favors preservation over excavation, recognizing that these are not just archaeological sites but sacred spaces that deserve respect as both religious landmarks and final resting places. This conservative stance stems from a deep understanding that these catacombs represent a direct connection to early Christian communities, and any disturbance must be justified by compelling reasons and conducted with appropriate reverence. The Vatican's Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology oversees access and research, ensuring that any investigation aligns with both scientific standards and religious sensibilities. This dual responsibility creates a unique dynamic where the pursuit of historical knowledge must always be tempered by respect for the spiritual significance these spaces hold for millions of believers worldwide. Environmental concerns present some of the most challenging obstacles to exploring these sealed chambers. The catacombs exist in a delicate equilibrium that has preserved wall paintings, inscriptions, and organic materials for nearly 2 millennia. The constant temperature and humidity levels have created a stable microenvironment where even fragile materials like textiles, wood, and pigments have survived in remarkable condition. Any breach of a sealed chamber could introduce outside air, microbial life, or fluctuations in humidity that would trigger rapid deterioration of these precious artifacts. The famous catacombs of Priscilla, for instance, contain 3rd century frescoes depicting what may be the earliest known images of the Virgin Mary, and the Adoration of the Magi paintings that have survived precisely because their environment remained undisturbed for centuries. The risk of damaging such irreplaceable artwork guides the extremely cautious approach to any new exploration. When investigation does proceed, it represents a fascinating collaboration between Vatican authorities and international scientific teams using the most advanced non-invasive technologies available. Multispectral imaging systems can detect faded paintings and inscriptions invisible to the naked eye, revealing details about early Christian iconography and worship practices. Laser scanning creates millimeter-perfect 3-dimensional maps of the intricate tunnel systems, helping researchers understand the layout and relationship between different burial areas. Ground-penetrating radar can map sealed chambers behind walls without physical intrusion, providing information about their size and potential contents. In some cases, researchers use endoscopic cameras inserted through tiny openings to glimpse what lies beyond sealed barriers, capturing images while minimizing disturbance to the internal environment. These technological approaches allow for significant research progress while honoring the preservation priorities that guide catacomb management. The potential discoveries within these sealed spaces could reshape our understanding of early Christianity's development. Unlike the formalized theology and practices that emerged after Constantine's legalization of Christianity in the 4th century, the catacombs represent the faith as practiced by ordinary believers facing persecution and uncertainty. Sealed chambers might contain personal devotional objects, writings that reflect diverse early Christian traditions, or burial arrangements that reveal how communities cared for their members during times of crisis. There's particular interest in chambers that might contain the tombs of important figures from Christianity's first centuries, not just recognized saints, but perhaps bishops, teachers, or community leaders whose names have been lost to history, but whose influence shaped the developing faith. Each sealed space represents a potential window into a crucial period when Christianity was transforming from a small Jewish sect into a major world religion. The ethical considerations extend beyond preservation science to questions of how human remains and sacred spaces should be treated. Many catacombs contain the skeletons of thousands of early Christians, and there's ongoing discussion within both archaeological and religious circles about the appropriate approach to these remains. While study of burial practices can provide valuable historical information, there's also recognition that these were real people whose final resting places deserve respect. The Catholic Church's approach generally emphasizes in situ preservation whenever possible, avoiding disturbance of human remains unless necessary for conservation or protection from damage. This respectful stance reflects both religious values and modern archaeological ethics, recognizing that the significance of these sites lies not just in what can be learned from them, but in their continued existence as places of historical memory and spiritual connection. This careful, methodical approach to Rome's sealed catacomb chambers represents a model of how religious stewardship and scientific inquiry can work together to protect cultural heritage. The patience exhibited by researchers and authorities alike demonstrates a profound understanding that some mysteries are worth preserving until they can be approached with the proper respect and technology. These sealed spaces beneath Rome remind us that history isn't just about discovering what's hidden, it's about understanding why certain things were hidden, and what their preservation across centuries can teach us about the people who created them and the beliefs that sustained them through difficult times. Moving from the sun-drenched Mediterranean to the rugged landscapes of Scandinavia, we encounter a different kind of sealed chamber mystery, one that speaks not of sunken libraries or pyramid voids, but of ships resting in the earth and warriors laid to rest with their treasures. Across Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, ground-penetrating radar has revealed tantalizing anomalies beneath the soil that suggest the presence of previously unknown Viking burial chambers, many potentially containing the most spectacular of all Norse burial practices, entire ships interred with their owners for the journey to the afterlife. These are not the famous already excavated ship burials like Oseberg or Gokstad, but new discoveries that have remained completely untouched since the Viking Age, holding the promise of revolutionizing our understanding of these legendary seafarers, traders, and explorers whose influence stretched from North America to the Caspian Sea. What makes these potential ship burials so extraordinarily significant is the window they could provide into Viking culture beyond the warrior stereotype. While popular imagination focuses on raiding and pillaging, the Vikings were also sophisticated traders, farmers, explorers, and artists whose ship technology allowed them to navigate across incredible distances. A completely untouched ship burial could contain not just weapons and armor but trading goods from distant lands, tools for farming and craftsmanship, navigational instruments, and personal items that reveal the daily lives of these often misunderstood people. The Oseberg ship, discovered in Norway in 1904, contained everything from wooden carts and sleds to kitchen utensils and textiles, a complete snapshot of Viking material culture. New undisturbed burials might yield even better preserved organic materials, particularly if they're located in conditions that prevented decomposition, potentially including leather, wood, textiles, and even food offerings that have vanished from previously excavated sites. The ethical considerations surrounding these sites have evolved significantly from archaeology's earlier days, when excavation often proceeded with less regard for cultural sensitivity. Modern Scandinavian archaeologists work closely with descendant communities and adhere to protocols that emphasize minimal disturbance of human remains. There's growing recognition that these burials represent not just archaeological resources but the ancestral heritage of modern Scandinavian peoples, deserving of respect rather than treatment as mere objects of study. Many countries now require extensive consultation with cultural heritage boards, and sometimes even public hearings before any excavation of burial sites can proceed. This careful approach reflects a broader shift in archaeology toward recognizing that the scientific value of human remains must be balanced against ethical considerations and the perspectives of those who see these individuals as their forebears. Beyond ethical concerns, there's the practical recognition that preservation in situ often represents the wisest long-term strategy. The rapidly advancing field of archaeological science means that non-invasive methods become more sophisticated each year. What we can learn without digging today far exceeds what was possible even a decade ago, and this trend will likely continue. By leaving these burials undisturbed, researchers preserve them for future technologies that might be able to create detailed three-dimensional maps of the entire contents, analyze microscopic environmental evidence, or even extract genetic information from soil samples without ever disturbing the burial itself. This patient approach acknowledges that sometimes the greatest contribution current archaeologists can make is to protect sites for future generations who will have tools and techniques we can scarcely imagine today. The technological arsenal available for studying these sealed Viking chambers without excavation has expanded dramatically in recent years. Ground-penetrating radar has become increasingly sophisticated, able to distinguish between different types of soil disturbance, identify the outlines of ships based on the patterns of nails and other metal fasteners, and even detect the chemical signatures of decayed organic materials. Magnetometry measures variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by features beneath the surface, particularly effective for locating the iron objects commonly found in Viking burials. Electrical resistivity surveying maps subsurface features by measuring how electrical currents travel through different materials, helping to distinguish between solid earth and buried voids like ship chambers. These methods often work best in combination, with data from multiple techniques combined to create comprehensive models of what lies beneath the surface. Perhaps most exciting are the developments in chemical analysis that can provide information without any physical disturbance. Phosphate mapping can identify areas where organic materials like human remains have decayed, leaving chemical traces in the soil. Analysis of soil microsampling can reveal the presence of specific materials that have decomposed, from wood types to textile fibers to food remains. Even airborne laser scanning (LiDAR) has proven valuable for identifying subtle landscape features that might indicate the presence of burial mounds that have been plowed flat over centuries but still affect surface topography in ways detectable from the air. These methods allow archaeologists to build remarkably detailed pictures of burial sites, estimating the size and orientation of ships, identifying the location of grave goods, and even speculating about the status and gender of the individuals buried based on the types of artifacts detected. The preservation conditions in Scandinavia present both challenges and opportunities for these sealed chambers. The acidic soils of many regions have often destroyed bones and other organic materials in previously excavated burials, but certain environments like clay-rich soils or waterlogged areas can create anaerobic conditions that preserve materials exceptionally well. The famous Viking ships preserved in museums survived because they were buried in blue clay that created an oxygen-free environment preventing decomposition. Modern archaeologists carefully analyze soil conditions before making decisions about excavation, recognizing that some environments might preserve materials too delicate to recover with current methods. In some cases, protective measures like installing drainage systems or monitoring equipment might be implemented to ensure the long-term preservation of sites left in the ground, actively managing them as protected archaeological resources rather than simply leaving them untouched. The cultural context of these Viking burials adds another layer of significance to their careful management. The Viking Age represents a foundational period in Scandinavian identity, and these sites carry weight beyond their archaeological importance. There's growing interest in involving local communities in decisions about how these sites are managed, with some areas developing programs that allow the public to participate in non-invasive surveys or learn about the technologies used to study buried sites. This approach helps build public support for preservation while satisfying curiosity about these fascinating aspects of Scandinavian heritage. The decision to leave a Viking ship burial undisturbed isn't just an archaeological calculation but a cultural choice that reflects contemporary values about preserving the past for future generations while respecting the intentions of those who created these remarkable monuments 1,000 years ago. Moving from the cool Scandinavian landscapes to the humid tropics of Southeast Asia, we encounter a sealed chamber mystery of truly monumental proportions, the hidden spaces beneath the magnificent temple complex of Angkor Wat. This isn't just another archaeological site. It's the largest religious monument ever constructed, originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu before transforming into a Buddhist temple complex, representing the absolute pinnacle of Khmer architectural and spiritual achievement. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The temple proper covers nearly 200 acres, with the entire ceremonial city extending over 115 square miles, all designed with precise celestial alignments and symbolic geometry that reflects the Hindu cosmology of Mount Meru as the center of the universe. Within this stone representation of the cosmos, numerous chambers and passages remain deliberately sealed, holding secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of one of history's most sophisticated civilizations. The potential significance of these sealed spaces extends far beyond mere curiosity about hidden treasures. The Khmer Empire dominated Southeast Asia from the 9th to 15th centuries, developing engineering capabilities that still astonish modern experts. Sophisticated water management systems, architectural techniques that allowed buildings to withstand tropical conditions, and artistic traditions that produced some of the world's most breathtaking stone carvings. Sealed chambers might contain royal archives written on perishable materials that haven't survived elsewhere, detailed records of the empire's trade networks that stretched to India and China, or ritual objects that could explain the complex religious syncretism that characterized Khmer spirituality. There's particular interest in chambers that might hold evidence of the advanced hydrological engineering that allowed Angkor to support a population of nearly 1 million people at its height, knowledge that collapsed along with the empire and might offer valuable insights for modern water management in similar climates. The hydrological challenges facing archaeologists at Angkor present a unique set of obstacles that make conventional excavation approaches nearly impossible. The entire temple complex exists in delicate equilibrium with the surrounding water table, which fluctuates dramatically between Cambodia's dry and monsoon seasons. During the rainy season, groundwater rises to within inches of the surface, potentially flooding any underground chambers, while the dry season sees water levels drop significantly. This constant expansion and contraction of the waterlogged soil creates tremendous pressure on ancient foundations, and any disturbance could trigger subsidence or collapse of structures above. The temple's foundation system itself is a masterpiece of engineering layers of sand and laterite stone that provide stability in the swampy environment, but breaching these carefully balanced systems could have catastrophic consequences for the entire monument's structural integrity. Beyond the water management challenges, there are significant concerns about the stability of the sandstone structures themselves. The Khmer builders used a sophisticated combination of sandstone blocks, laterite fill, and intricate joinery that has withstood centuries of tropical weather, but the relentless growth of vegetation has created invisible weaknesses. Giant silk cotton and strangler fig trees have sent roots deep into the masonry, creating cracks and displacements that aren't always visible from the surface. Any attempt to access sealed chambers might inadvertently disturb these precarious balances, potentially causing sections of the elaborate bas-reliefs or tower structures to shift or collapse. The memory of previous stabilization efforts that accidentally caused damage informs the current extremely cautious approach, with archaeologists recognizing that sometimes the most skilled intervention is knowing when not to intervene at all. The political and management landscape surrounding Angkor adds another layer of complexity to any potential exploration. The temple complex is administered by the Apsara National Authority, Cambodia's special government body responsible for protecting and managing the Angkor archaeological site, which must balance international research interests with local community needs and national pride. The site's designation as a UNESCO World Heritage location brings both resources and responsibilities, with strict protocols governing any intervention. There are also ongoing discussions about how discoveries might be interpreted within Cambodia's complex historical narrative, particularly following the devastating Khmer Rouge period when cultural heritage was systematically targeted. Any exploration of sealed chambers would require not just technical expertise but sensitive diplomatic navigation between multiple stakeholders with sometimes competing priorities. The religious significance of Angkor Wat to both the Theravada Buddhists and the local community creates additional ethical considerations that guide the cautious approach. The temple remains an active place of worship, with monks maintaining daily rituals and pilgrims visiting from across Southeast Asia. Many sealed chambers are believed to contain sacred relics or represent spiritually significant spaces that should not be disturbed. There's growing recognition within the archaeological community that Western scientific curiosity must be balanced with respect for living religious traditions, and that the local community's perspectives on whether and how these spaces should be explored carry significant weight. This collaborative approach has led to protocols that prioritize non-invasive investigation and respect for the spiritual significance of the site, ensuring that any research enhances rather than diminishes the temple's living cultural heritage. Current research methodologies reflect this multifaceted, cautious approach while still seeking to understand what lies within these sealed spaces. International teams using advanced ground-penetrating radar have mapped extensive underground anomalies that suggest networks of chambers and passages beneath the central temple complex. Airborne laser scanning (LiDAR) has revolutionized understanding of the broader Angkor landscape, revealing previously unknown structures and hydraulic engineering features beneath the forest canopy, and similar technologies are being adapted for detailed investigation of the temple itself. Thermal imaging conducted at different times of day can reveal subtle temperature variations that indicate voids or different construction materials behind solid walls. Perhaps most promising is the development of micro-drilling techniques that allow researchers to extract tiny core samples for environmental analysis without significant structural impact, providing clues about what might be preserved in sealed environments. The preservation philosophy at Angkor Wat represents a sophisticated evolution in how we approach cultural heritage sites in the 21st century. Rather than seeing sealed chambers as problems to be solved through excavation, archaeologists and conservators now view them as time capsules that might be better preserved intact for future generations with more advanced technologies. There's growing recognition that the information value of these spaces isn't just in their artifacts but in their complete environmental context. The specific conditions that have preserved materials for centuries, the spatial relationships between objects, and even the microbial environments that might hold clues about preservation processes. This patient approach acknowledges that sometimes the most valuable archaeological practice is knowing what not to dig, preserving these sealed chambers as resources for future scientists who will have tools and methodologies we can scarcely imagine today, ensuring that the mysteries of Angkor Wat continue to inspire and inform generations yet to come. While the pyramids of Egypt and temples of Southeast Asia represent grand imperial projects, the sealed Etruscan tombs scattered throughout central Italy offer a more intimate glimpse into a sophisticated civilization that profoundly influenced Roman culture yet remains shrouded in mystery. These aren't the monumental structures of pharaohs or emperors, but the resting places of a people who dominated Italy before Rome's rise, whose language remains only partially deciphered, and whose sophisticated art and religious practices continue to puzzle historians. The Etruscans built elaborate necropolises like the ones at Cerveteri and Tarquinia, often called cities of the dead, with streets, squares, and family tombs that mirrored their living communities. Within these underground complexes, numerous chambers remain sealed exactly as the Etruscans left them, potentially containing complete burial assemblages that could finally help us understand this enigmatic culture that taught the Romans everything from architecture to divination. What makes these sealed tombs particularly significant is the Etruscans' extraordinary artistic legacy, especially their vibrant wall paintings that depict everything from banquets and dances to religious ceremonies and athletic competitions. Unlike the formalized art of later Roman periods, Etruscan paintings burst with life, movement, and vivid color, showing a people who apparently embraced life's pleasures while maintaining complex beliefs about the afterlife. The Tomb of the Leopards in Tarquinia, for instance, features breathtaking frescoes of dancers and musicians that feel astonishingly modern in their expressive energy. Sealed tombs might contain even more spectacular examples of this artistic tradition, perfectly preserved away from light, air, and human interference. The potential for discovering untouched paintings with their original colors and details intact drives much of the archaeological interest in these spaces, but also justifies the extreme caution surrounding their exploration. The preservation challenges with Etruscan tombs represent some of the most heartbreaking lessons in archaeological history. When the renowned Reggio Emilia tomb was opened in the 19th century, archaeologists watched in horror as vibrant paintings that had survived for over 2,500 years began to fade within hours of exposure to outside air. Organic materials fared even worse. Wooden furniture inlaid with ivory, delicate textiles, leather goods, and food offerings literally crumbled to dust before researchers could properly document them. This pattern repeated itself at multiple sites throughout the 20th century, creating a legacy of loss that fundamentally changed how archaeologists approach sealed environments. The problem isn't merely atmospheric changes, but the complex chemistry of preservation. Many tombs maintain specific humidity levels that prevent microbial growth, and even slight alterations can trigger rapid deterioration processes that cannot be reversed once started. Modern approaches to these sealed chambers have evolved into a sophisticated dance of minimal intervention and maximum information gathering. Italian archaeological authorities, particularly the Soprintendenza Archeologica, have developed protocols that prioritize non-invasive investigation whenever possible. Teams from institutions like the Italian National Research Council employ laser scanning systems that create millimeter-perfect three-dimensional models of tomb interiors without any physical contact. These digital replicas allow researchers to study spatial relationships, take precise measurements, and even analyze painting techniques in incredible detail without risking damage to the originals. Multispectral imaging can detect faded pigments and preliminary sketches beneath the visible surface, revealing the artist's creative process and sometimes identifying paintings that have become invisible to the naked eye over centuries. Perhaps the most exciting technological development involves the use of endoscopic cameras that can be inserted through existing cracks or tiny drill holes no wider than a pencil. These flexible fiber optic systems can navigate through narrow openings and transmit high-resolution images back to researchers, providing glimpses of sealed chambers without significant environmental disturbance. Some advanced systems even incorporate micro-environmental sensors that can measure temperature, humidity, and gas composition within the sealed spaces, helping scientists understand the preservation conditions that have protected these artifacts for millennia. This data is crucial for developing conservation strategies should eventual excavation become necessary, allowing researchers to recreate the tomb's microenvironment in laboratory settings to prevent the catastrophic losses that occurred in previous generations. The potential discoveries within these sealed Etruscan tombs extend far beyond artistic masterpieces. The Etruscans left behind relatively few written records, and their language remains only partially understood despite decades of scholarly work. Sealed tombs might contain bronze tablets, lead scrolls, or even linen books with extensive inscriptions that could finally help decipher the Etruscan language, potentially revealing their literature, historical records, and religious texts. Personal items could provide unprecedented insight into daily life. Cosmetics containers with residue that could be analyzed for ingredients, medical kits with surgical instruments, or gaming sets that reveal how they entertained themselves. The Etruscans were renowned metalworkers, and sealed tombs might contain gold jewelry, bronze mirrors, and silver vessels of even higher quality than already discovered examples, preserved in pristine condition without the corrosion that affects objects exposed to fluctuating environments. The geographical distribution of these sealed tombs adds another layer of complexity to their investigation. Unlike the concentrated royal burials of Egypt or the organized necropolises of Rome, Etruscan tombs are scattered throughout the rolling hills of Tuscany, Lazio, and Umbria, often on private land or beneath modern developments. This creates significant challenges for systematic investigation, as each site requires individual negotiation with landowners, environmental impact assessments, and sometimes even addressing the concerns of local communities who view these tombs as part of their regional identity rather than just archaeological resources. The Italian government's approach emphasizes protection and monitoring, with many known but unexcavated tombs registered, fenced off, and periodically checked for signs of looting or environmental changes rather than actively investigated. This patient philosophy reflects a broader shift in how we value archaeological preservation. There's growing recognition that the information potential of these sealed tombs isn't diminishing with time. If anything, it's increasing as technologies improve. By leaving them undisturbed, we preserve them for future generations of researchers who will have tools and methodologies we cannot yet imagine. The sealed Etruscan tombs stand as a testament to this long-term perspective, reminding us that sometimes the most valuable archaeological practice is knowing what not to excavate, preserving these time capsules until we can approach them with the respect and technological sophistication they deserve. Carved into the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, the magnificent facade of Petra's treasury presents one of the most iconic and breathtaking sights of the ancient world. Yet behind its perfectly proportioned columns and ornate sculptures lies a mystery that has intrigued explorers and archaeologists for generations. This isn't merely a beautiful building front, it's the visible face of a much larger structural puzzle, with sonic testing and ground-penetrating radar revealing a complex network of chambers and voids extending deep into the sandstone mountain. These hidden spaces, deliberately sealed by the Nabateans, potentially hold the answers to some of the most persistent questions about this sophisticated trading civilization that controlled the incense routes and carved an empire out of the desert. The possibility that these chambers might contain royal burials, temple treasures, or even the lost archives of a people who left surprisingly few written records creates an almost irresistible temptation for exploration. Yet the approach to this mystery exemplifies the modern ethical standards that now guide archaeology. The challenges of investigating these sealed spaces are as multifaceted as the facade itself, beginning with the very material from which Petra is crafted. The beautiful rose-red sandstone that gives the city its magical appearance is also notoriously fragile, susceptible to erosion from wind, water, and even the subtle vibrations of nearby footsteps. The intricate carvings on the treasury's exterior, from the eagles symbolizing divinity to the dancing Amazons and mythological figures, have survived for over 2,000 years precisely because they've remained protected in their desert environment. Any attempt to access the hidden chambers behind them would require cutting through or moving these precisely balanced stones, potentially triggering cracks or collapses that could irreparably damage one of the world's most celebrated archaeological treasures. The structural integrity of the entire facade is interconnected in ways modern engineers are still working to fully understand, with each stone carefully positioned by Nabatean builders who mastered this unique architectural form. Beyond the immediate physical risks, there's the broader challenge of managing a living World Heritage Site that welcomes nearly 1 million visitors annually. The treasury isn't a remote archaeological dig accessible only to specialists. It's the centerpiece of Jordan's tourism industry and a symbol of national pride. Any investigative work would need to occur in full view of thousands of daily visitors, requiring complex logistics to ensure both public safety and the security of the research. The dust, noise, and visual impact of traditional excavation methods would significantly detract from the visitor experience that sustains the local economy and funds conservation efforts throughout Petra. The Jordanian Department of Antiquities must balance the scientific value of potential discoveries against their responsibility to protect both the physical site and the intangible experience that makes Petra so special to people from around the world. The Nabateans themselves seem to have designed their structures with a sophisticated understanding of their environment that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. Their water management systems, which allowed a city of 30,000 to thrive in the desert, represent engineering genius, and their tomb construction appears equally thoughtful. The sealed chambers behind the treasury might have been designed with specific environmental conditions in mind, particular levels of humidity and temperature that have preserved organic materials for centuries. Opening these spaces could disrupt these carefully balanced microclimates, causing textiles, papyrus documents, or wooden artifacts to deteriorate within hours of exposure to outside air. The potential loss isn't just theoretical. At other Nabatean sites, well-intentioned excavations have led to the rapid deterioration of materials that had survived intact since antiquity, teaching archaeologists hard lessons about the fragility of these hidden treasures. Current research approaches this challenge with a suite of non-invasive technologies that would seem like science fiction to earlier generations of archaeologists. Advanced laser scanning creates three-dimensional models of the facade with millimeter precision, allowing researchers to study every detail without physical contact. Thermal imaging cameras detect subtle temperature variations between stones, potentially indicating hidden voids or different construction materials behind the visible surface. Sonic testing, which involves tapping stones and analyzing the sound waves that return, can map the depth and arrangement of spaces behind the solid rock. Perhaps most promising is the use of muon tomography, the same cosmic ray technology used to explore Egyptian pyramids, which could potentially create detailed images of the chamber system without any physical intrusion whatsoever. These methods allow scientists to build increasingly sophisticated understanding of what lies behind the facade while respecting the integrity of the structure and the intentions of those who created it. The cultural and spiritual significance of Petra to the Jordanian people and the local Bedouin communities adds another dimension to the decision-making process. The site holds deep meaning beyond its archaeological value, with many Jordanians viewing it as a sacred national treasure rather than merely a historical resource. The Bedouin tribes who have lived in the area for generations maintain their own cultural connections to the site and perspectives on how it should be treated. Any decision to explore the sealed chambers involves extensive consultation with these stakeholders, ensuring that respect for cultural heritage guides the scientific process. This collaborative approach reflects a growing recognition in archaeology that the most important discoveries aren't just about what we find, but how we go about looking for it and what our methods say about our respect for both the past and those who value it in the present. The sealed chambers of Petra's treasury stand as a powerful symbol of archaeology's evolving ethos, where patience and preservation have become as valued as discovery and revelation. They remind us that some mysteries are meant to be appreciated as mysteries, their power residing in their ability to make us wonder rather than in their capacity to provide answers. The rose-red facade continues to guard its secrets with the same dignity it has maintained for centuries, challenging us to develop better questions rather than simply seeking better tools for breaking through barriers. In this delicate balance between curiosity and respect, we find the true meaning of cultural stewardship, the understanding that the greatest treasures are sometimes those we choose to leave untouched for future generations to appreciate in their own way, in their own time. Carved deep into the cliffs along the ancient Silk Road, where traders and pilgrims once moved between empires, a different kind of treasure remains hidden behind sealed rock faces, the unexplored Buddhist cave chambers of Central Asia. These are not merely empty voids in the stone, they are time capsules from one of history's most fascinating cultural exchange routes, potentially containing manuscripts, artworks, and artifacts that could reshape our understanding of how Buddhism spread across continents. The most famous of these, the Mogao Caves near Dunhuang, already astonish visitors with their hundreds of decorated grottos, but the discovery of Cave 17, the so-called Library Cave, in 1900, revealed just how much might still be hidden. That single chamber, found by a Taoist monk, contained tens of thousands of manuscripts, silk paintings, and textiles dating from the 4th to the 11th centuries, a discovery that revolutionized the study of Silk Road history. The sobering reality for archaeologists is that similar sealed chambers likely still exist within these vast cave complexes, their contents protected by deliberate concealment or simply lost to time, holding the possibility of additional texts, early printed materials, or even complete libraries that didn't make it into that original hidden repository. The contents these chambers might safeguard extend far beyond religious texts to include a breathtaking array of secular knowledge and artistic expression. The Silk Road was the internet of its day, a network along which ideas, technologies, and cultures flowed as freely as trade goods. Sealed caves could contain medical treatises showing the exchange of healing practices between India, Persia, and China, or astronomical charts documenting how stellar knowledge moved across civilizations. There might be musical scores preserving lost melodies, legal documents detailing commercial contracts and dispute resolutions between different ethnic groups, or even personal letters that provide intimate glimpses into the lives of ordinary people who lived, worked, and worshipped along these routes. The artistic potential is equally staggering. Early examples of printing technology, intricately woven textiles that have been protected from light and moisture, or paintings on silk and paper that would expand our understanding of artistic techniques and iconography across different periods and regions. Each sealed chamber represents not just a collection of objects but a frozen moment in the complex web of cultural exchange that defined the Silk Road for centuries. The extraordinary fragility of these potential discoveries is what makes archaeologists approach with such reverence and caution. The manuscripts from the known Library Cave were written on materials ranging from palm leaves to paper, using inks that can be sensitive to even slight changes in humidity or light exposure. Many of the texts are stored as tightly rolled scrolls that have maintained their structural integrity precisely because they haven't been disturbed for centuries. Unrolling them requires painstaking processes that can take months or even years for a single document. Beyond the manuscripts themselves, the cave environments often contain delicate wall paintings created with mineral pigments on specially prepared plaster surfaces, artworks that can begin to deteriorate if the cave's microclimate is altered. The sealing of these chambers created stable environments where temperature and humidity remained constant, protecting organic materials that would have perished elsewhere. Breaking that seal could trigger irreversible damage within hours, as has happened tragically at other sites where well-intentioned exploration led to rapid deterioration of priceless materials. Modern research approaches these sealed spaces with a sophisticated array of non-invasive technologies designed to learn without disturbing. Ground-penetrating radar can map the extent of cave systems and identify potential chambers hidden behind walls or filled with debris. Thermal imaging cameras detect subtle temperature variations that might indicate voids or different construction materials behind visible surfaces. Laser scanning creates incredibly detailed three-dimensional models of known caves, helping researchers understand architectural patterns that might suggest the location of sealed chambers. Perhaps most promising are developments in micro-environmental monitoring, where researchers drill tiny boreholes, sometimes just millimeters wide, to insert sensors that can measure temperature, humidity, and gas composition within sealed spaces without significantly altering the internal conditions. These technological approaches allow scientists to build comprehensive understanding of what might be preserved and in what condition, informing decisions about whether and how exploration might eventually proceed. The international collaboration surrounding these sites represents a model of cultural heritage management that balances multiple interests and expertise. Teams from institutions like the Getty Conservation Institute work alongside Chinese authorities from the Dunhuang Academy, combining cutting-edge scientific approaches with deep cultural understanding. This partnership has led to the development of sophisticated conservation protocols that prioritize monitoring and stabilization over excavation, recognizing that sometimes the most valuable intervention is preventing damage rather than seeking new discoveries. The caves are monitored with electronic sensors that track environmental conditions, and visitor access is carefully managed to minimize human impact on the delicate balance that has preserved these spaces for so long. When investigation does occur, it follows meticulous planning that includes creating exact replicas of cave environments in laboratory settings to test conservation methods before they're applied to the actual sites, ensuring that any intervention is based on thorough understanding rather than hopeful experimentation. The ethical dimensions of exploring these Buddhist cave chambers extend beyond mere preservation science to questions of cultural patrimony and access to knowledge. The manuscripts and artifacts from previously opened caves are now scattered across museums and collections worldwide, a legacy of earlier archaeological practices that saw foreign expeditions remove materials for study abroad. Modern approaches emphasize in situ preservation and collaboration, ensuring that any new discoveries remain under the stewardship of the communities and nations where they're found. There are also important spiritual considerations. These were sacred spaces created for meditation and worship, and many contemporary Buddhist communities feel a living connection to them. Their perspectives on whether and how these spaces should be explored carry significant weight in decision-making processes, ensuring that scientific curiosity is balanced with respect for ongoing religious traditions. This collaborative, multidisciplinary approach recognizes that the greatest value of these sealed chambers may lie not in what they contain, but in how their careful stewardship models a more respectful and sustainable relationship with our shared cultural heritage. Deep beneath the towering pyramids and sprawling plazas of ancient Maya cities lies a hidden world of engineering marvels that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. The elaborate water management systems that allowed these magnificent urban centers to flourish in the unpredictable tropical environment. Unlike the tombs and temples that capture public imagination, these subterranean chambers represent a different kind of mystery, one rooted not in spiritual beliefs but in brilliant hydrological innovation. The Maya faced extraordinary challenges in managing water resources, with seasonal downpours that could cause devastating floods followed by dry periods that threatened survival. Their solution was nothing short of genius, creating intricate networks of underground reservoirs, filtration systems, and sealed chambers designed to capture, store, and purify water for thousands of urban residents. These spaces weren't merely functional, they were often beautifully constructed with plaster-lined walls, sophisticated hydraulic features, and in some cases, ceremonial elements that suggest water held profound spiritual significance alongside its practical importance. What makes these sealed water chambers particularly fascinating is their potential to rewrite our understanding of Maya resilience and technological sophistication. Earlier archaeological theories often portrayed the Maya collapse as partly caused by water management failures during prolonged droughts, but the discovery of these sophisticated systems suggests a much more complex relationship with their environment. The chambers likely contain engineering features that demonstrate advanced understanding of hydrology, including sedimentation tanks for removing impurities, carefully calculated flow rates to prevent erosion, and distribution systems that could direct water to different parts of the city as needed. Some researchers believe they might find evidence of pressure systems or even primitive plumbing that would challenge our timeline of hydraulic innovation in the ancient world. Beyond the engineering aspects, these sealed environments might preserve organic materials that have vanished from other contexts, perhaps wooden tools used in construction, plant materials used for filtration, or even botanical remains that would reveal what crops the Maya were irrigating during different periods of their history. The exploration challenges presented by these water systems are unlike any others in archaeology, combining the structural concerns of underground voids with the constant threat of flooding and collapse. Many of these chambers are located beneath the water table or in areas where seasonal rains still fill them periodically, creating conditions that are both dangerous for researchers and potentially damaging to any equipment used for investigation. The limestone bedrock that underlies most Maya sites is notoriously porous and unstable, with hidden fissures and sinkholes that can open without warning. There's also the complex nature of the systems themselves. They weren't built as single chambers, but as interconnected networks that might extend for miles beneath ancient cities, making it difficult to understand where one space ends and another begins. The potential for accidentally breaching a wall and causing catastrophic flooding of adjacent chambers or even surface collapse above keeps archaeologists extremely cautious about any physical intrusion into these spaces. Adding to the complexity is the remarkable preservation environment that these waterlogged chambers provide, and the risk of destroying precisely what makes them valuable. The anaerobic conditions created by water saturation can preserve organic materials that would have vanished in drier environments, potentially including wooden artifacts, textiles, or even food remains that would provide unprecedented insight into daily Maya life. However, exposing these materials to air could trigger rapid deterioration, as has happened at other Maya sites where well-preserved wooden objects literally crumbled to dust within hours of excavation. The water chemistry itself might hold valuable information about ancient environmental conditions, containing pollen, soil particles, or chemical signatures that could reveal details about climate patterns, agricultural practices, or even pollution levels in the ancient city. Any attempt to explore these chambers risks contaminating or destroying this delicate environmental evidence, making researchers understandably hesitant to proceed without absolutely certain methods. Technological innovation is offering new ways to study these sealed water systems without the risks of physical intrusion. Remote-operated vehicles, similar to those used in underwater archaeology, are being adapted for use in these flooded chambers, equipped with lights, cameras, and sampling tools that can operate in complete darkness and navigate through narrow passages. Advanced sonar imaging can create detailed maps of underwater spaces, distinguishing between different types of sediment and potentially identifying artifacts on chamber floors. Ground-penetrating radar has become increasingly sophisticated at detecting voids and density variations beneath the surface, though water saturation presents challenges for this technology. Perhaps most promising are developments in environmental DNA analysis, where tiny water samples extracted through narrow tubes could be analyzed for genetic material from plants, animals, or even humans that might have interacted with these water systems, providing information about what these chambers contained without ever needing to enter them physically. The cultural significance of these water chambers extends beyond their engineering marvels to touch on the very essence of Maya worldview. Water wasn't merely a practical necessity for the Maya, it was deeply woven into their spiritual beliefs and cosmological understanding. Their creation myth featured the hero twins journeying through the underwater realm of Xibalba, and water was associated with both life-giving properties and dangerous supernatural forces. This dual significance might be reflected in the artifacts. These sealed chambers contain perhaps ceremonial offerings placed to appease water deities, or inscriptions describing rituals performed to ensure adequate rainfall. The potential discovery of such materials could provide the missing links in our understanding of how the Maya integrated practical engineering with spiritual practice, creating a holistic approach to survival that sustained their civilization for centuries in a challenging environment. Each sealed chamber represents not just a technological achievement, but a cultural statement about how one of history's most fascinating civilizations understood and interacted with the natural world around them. Beneath the very heart of ancient Rome, where emperors once walked through palaces that defined the known world, lies a hidden landscape of sealed chambers that have resisted exploration for nearly 2 millennia. The Palatine Hill isn't just another archaeological site. It's the symbolic center of the Roman Empire, the place where Romulus supposedly founded the city, and where Augustus established the imperial residence that would be emulated by rulers for centuries. This concentration of power means that the sealed spaces beneath its surface aren't merely storage rooms or forgotten crypts. They potentially contain the administrative heartbeat of an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt. We're not just talking about potential treasure here, though that certainly exists. We're discussing the possibility of finding the actual imperial archives, the meticulous records that documented everything from military deployments and tax collection to diplomatic correspondence and Senate proceedings. The chance to recover such documents would be like discovering the complete operational manual for running the ancient world's most sophisticated administration. The challenges of accessing these chambers present a perfect storm of archaeological complications that make the Egyptian pyramids seem straightforward by comparison. Modern Rome isn't just built near these ancient structures, it's built directly on top of and around them, creating a complex sandwich of history where 21st century infrastructure coexists with 1st century foundations. The weight of modern buildings, the vibration from subway lines, and the network of sewer and electrical systems all create constant pressure on the delicate ancient structures below. Any excavation attempt risks triggering subsidence that could damage both ancient and modern structures, creating a literal balancing act between discovery and preservation. The geological composition adds another layer of difficulty. The Palatine Hill consists of layers of volcanic tuff, clay, and sedimentary deposits that have been fractured by earthquakes and human activity over 2 millennia, creating unpredictable stability issues that make traditional excavation approaches potentially dangerous. Beyond the physical challenges, there are significant political and bureaucratic hurdles that guide the extremely cautious approach. The Palatine Hill falls under the jurisdiction of multiple Italian governmental bodies, each with their own priorities and protocols. The Soprintendent and the Special Archaeologia Bell'Arte e Paesaggio di Roma must balance archaeological research with public access to one of Italy's most visited historical sites. The potential historical significance of any discovery means that international oversight from UNESCO and other cultural heritage organizations would likely be required, creating a multi-layered decision-making process that prioritizes careful planning over rapid exploration. There's also the sobering reality that any major discovery could potentially rewrite historical narratives that have been accepted for centuries, creating academic and even political implications that extend far beyond the archaeological community. The sealed chambers might contain information that challenges established narratives about specific emperors, military campaigns, or administrative practices, making their exploration a matter of delicate historical diplomacy as much as scientific curiosity. Current research methodologies have evolved to meet these unique challenges with remarkable sophistication. International teams using advanced ground-penetrating radar have created detailed three-dimensional maps of the subterranean landscape, revealing anomalies that suggest chambers, tunnels, and structural features that don't appear in any historical records. Electrical resistivity tomography measures how electrical currents travel through different materials, helping distinguish between solid bedrock, empty voids, and debris-filled spaces. Laser scanning of known structures like the Domus Augustana and Domus Flavia creates incredibly precise digital models that help researchers understand construction techniques and identify areas where hidden chambers might be located. Perhaps most impressive is the development of micro-invasive techniques where researchers drill boreholes less than 2 inches wide to insert endoscopic cameras and environmental sensors, allowing them to glimpse into sealed spaces and monitor their atmospheric conditions without significant disturbance. These technological approaches represent a new era in urban archaeology, where the goal isn't to dig but to understand, preserving both the ancient secrets and the modern city that has grown above them. The potential contents of these imperial chambers extend far beyond the obvious historical value to include materials that could revolutionize our understanding of Roman daily life. While the possibility of finding lost literary works by authors like Livy or Seneca captures the imagination, equally exciting is the potential for discovering organic materials preserved in the unique microclimates of these sealed spaces. The Palatine's position above the Tiber River floodplain creates variable humidity levels that might have perfectly preserved wooden writing tablets, leather scroll cases, textile fragments, or even food remains from imperial banquets. Such materials rarely survive from antiquity and would provide unprecedented insight into the material culture of Rome's elite. There's also the fascinating possibility of finding architectural plans or engineering diagrams that reveal how the Romans conceived and executed their massive building projects, potentially including secrets of their concrete formulation that has proven more durable than modern equivalents. Each sealed chamber represents not just a container of objects but a frozen moment in the operational reality of imperial power, waiting to reveal its secrets to those patient enough to listen. Isolated in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Easter Island represents one of humanity's most captivating and tragic mysteries, a place where the silent gaze of hundreds of monumental stone figures, the Moai, watches over a landscape marked by both incredible achievement and profound collapse. The potential existence of sealed chambers within the island's volcanic rock offers a tantalizing possibility that, hidden away from the elements and centuries of curiosity, might lie the very artifacts that could explain how a small Polynesian society created such an astonishing cultural output, only to see it unravel. These aren't merely hidden rooms, they are potential vaults containing the lost narrative of the Rapa Nui people, possibly holding the wooden tablets called rongo-rongo, the island's undeciphered script ceremonial objects used in the cult of the Moai, or tools that reveal the sophisticated engineering methods behind moving and erecting the multi-ton statues. For archaeologists, the allure is immense, representing a chance to move beyond speculation and understand the precise social organization, spiritual beliefs, and ultimately the vulnerabilities that led to the civilization's famous decline. The extreme caution exercised by researchers here is born from a complex web of factors that extend far beyond typical archaeological concerns. Easter Island's remote location, one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth, creates profound logistical challenges. Transporting delicate equipment and conservation materials is incredibly difficult and expensive, meaning any excavation must be meticulously planned with no room for error or the need for rapid resupply. More significantly, the island's entire ecosystem is exceptionally fragile, having never fully recovered from the deforestation and environmental depletion that contributed to the ancient society's collapse. The soil is thin and vulnerable to erosion, and the introduction of non-native species or even the disturbance of archaeological layers could have lasting negative impacts on the island's unique flora and fauna. This environmental sensitivity means that standard archaeological practices must be reimagined and adapted to ensure that the quest for knowledge doesn't inadvertently damage the very place researchers are trying to understand. Perhaps the most important factor guiding the cautious approach is the profound cultural and spiritual significance of Easter Island to the Rapa Nui people. For the indigenous community, the island, or Rapa Nui, is not an archaeological playground but a living ancestor, a sacred landscape where the past is intimately connected to the present. The Moai are not merely statues, they are considered the living faces of deified ancestors embodying spiritual power or mana. Any sealed chambers are likely viewed not as untouched dig sites but as resting places for sacred objects or even burials, making the idea of intrusive excavation deeply disrespectful from a traditional perspective. The history of outside exploration on the island has often been one of exploitation, from the Peruvian slave raids that decimated the population in the 19th century to early archaeologists who removed cultural treasures with little regard for local beliefs. Modern researchers are acutely aware of this painful history and are committed to an approach that prioritizes Rapa Nui sovereignty and perspectives over external scientific curiosity. This commitment has led to a fundamental shift in how potential discoveries are approached. The prevailing philosophy now is one of collaborative stewardship rather than exclusive expertise. Any discussion of investigating sealed chambers would begin not in a university laboratory but in community meetings with the Rapa Nui people, their elders, and cultural leaders. The decision-making process would be guided by the concept of reciprocity, ensuring that any knowledge gained directly benefits the local community and aligns with their values and wishes. This might mean that certain chambers, if discovered, are documented through non-invasive means like ground-penetrating radar or seismic tomography, but are then left undisturbed out of respect, their secrets preserved as the ancient islanders intended. Alternatively, if exploration proceeds, it would likely be led or co-led by Rapa Nui archaeologists and include strict protocols designed by the community to ensure spiritual and cultural safety, perhaps involving traditional ceremonies before, during, and after any work. The technological toolkit for such an investigation would need to be as innovative as the collaborative model guiding its use. Given the constraints, researchers would rely heavily on the most advanced remote sensing technologies available. Drones equipped with high-resolution cameras and LiDAR could create detailed three-dimensional maps of the volcanic rock formations, identifying subtle anomalies that suggest human-made cavities. Muon tomography, which successfully revealed hidden voids in Egyptian pyramids, could be deployed to peer deep into solid rock without a single scratch. If a decision were made to physically explore a chamber, engineers might develop ultra-minimally invasive techniques, perhaps using flexible endoscopic cameras threaded through natural fissures to capture images without the need for drilling or excavation. Every step would be measured against the potential risk to the structural stability of the site, the fragile environment, and the cultural integrity of the island, ensuring that the quest for answers about the past doesn't compromise the well-being of its future. Moving from the isolated mysteries of Easter Island to the grand imperial heart of ancient Persia, we encounter sealed chambers that represent not just archaeological puzzles, but the very soul of an empire that once defined civilization. The magnificent ruins of Persepolis stand as a testament to the Achaemenid Empire's breathtaking ambition, where kings like Darius and Xerxes ruled over territories stretching from the Indus Valley to the Nile Delta. Yet for all the splendor visible in the towering columns and elaborate reliefs depicting tributaries from 23 nations, the most tantalizing secrets likely lie hidden in chambers deliberately sealed within the very platform upon which this ceremonial capital was built. These are not accidental voids but carefully constructed spaces that potentially contain the operational records of history's first true superpower, the royal archives, administrative documents, and treasured artifacts that managed an empire governing nearly half of the world's known population at its zenith. The significance of these potential discoveries extends far beyond mere historical curiosity to touch upon fundamental questions about how human civilization organized itself on an unprecedented scale. The Achaemenid Empire pioneered administrative systems that would influence governance for millennia, from standardized coinage and road networks to sophisticated communication systems using royal messengers. Sealed chambers might contain the actual clay tablets that documented this revolutionary bureaucracy, records of tax collection from satrapies, diplomatic correspondence with Greek city-states, engineering plans for the royal road system, or even military deployment orders that shaped the course of ancient history. The famous fortification tablets and treasury tablets already discovered at Persepolis have provided invaluable insights, but they represent only a fraction of what must have been an enormous archival system. The possibility of finding complete, undisturbed record collections could fundamentally reshape our understanding of how this multicultural empire maintained stability across diverse cultures and vast distances for over 2 centuries. The political landscape surrounding these sites creates a complex framework that guides the extremely cautious approach to exploration. Persepolis occupies a central place in Iranian national identity, representing a pre-Islamic golden age that figures prominently in the country's historical consciousness. The Iranian Cultural Heritage, Handicrafts and Tourism Organization operates under mandates that prioritize preservation and national sovereignty, requiring that any archaeological work be conducted under strict supervision and with explicit approval from multiple governmental bodies. International collaborations have occurred notably with institutions like the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago in earlier decades, but current geopolitical realities mean that foreign involvement is carefully scrutinized and often limited. This protective stance isn't merely bureaucratic. It reflects a deep-seated commitment to ensuring that Iran's cultural patrimony remains under Iranian stewardship, with decisions about exploration made according to local timelines and priorities rather than external academic pressure. Preservation concerns present equally compelling reasons for maintaining the status quo of these sealed chambers. The climate of the Iranian plateau, with its extreme temperature fluctuations between scorching summers and cold winters, creates challenging conditions for organic materials that might be preserved within these spaces. While the famous cuneiform tablets baked in ancient conflagrations have survived remarkably well, other materials like leather scrolls, wooden writing boards, textiles, or even painted artworks would be extraordinarily vulnerable to environmental changes upon exposure. The experience at other Near Eastern sites has demonstrated how quickly materials preserved for millennia can deteriorate when their microclimates are disrupted. Parchment can crumble, pigments can fade, and even stable-seeming materials can suffer from salt crystallization or microbial attack once oxygen and moisture penetrate their long-sealed environments. The memory of such losses informs the conservative approach, with researchers recognizing that sometimes the most responsible decision is to wait until conservation science develops methods that can guarantee full protection for whatever might be discovered. Technological innovation is providing alternative pathways to understanding these sealed spaces without physical intrusion. Iranian archaeologists and their international partners are employing increasingly sophisticated non-invasive methods to study what lies beneath the stone platforms of Persepolis and other Achaemenid sites. Ground-penetrating radar has been deployed to map subsurface anomalies, though the complex layered construction of the platforms presents challenges for interpretation. Muon tomography, which uses cosmic rays to create three-dimensional images of dense structures, offers promise for mapping larger voids without any physical contact. Drone-based photogrammetry creates detailed digital models of the entire site, allowing researchers to analyze architectural patterns that might indicate the location and purpose of sealed chambers. Perhaps most significantly, multispectral imaging and thermal cameras can detect subtle temperature variations and chemical signatures that might distinguish between solid fill, empty spaces, and different types of materials hidden behind stone barriers. The potential for these chambers to resolve historical debates adds another layer of significance to their careful management. The Greek accounts of Persian history, particularly those by Herodotus and later historians, were written from the perspective of adversaries and contain obvious biases and probable exaggerations. Contemporary Persian sources would provide an invaluable corrective to these external narratives, potentially offering first-hand accounts of pivotal events like the Greco-Persian Wars or the reign of specific monarchs about whom we have limited reliable information. There's particular interest in whether these chambers might contain evidence related to the empire's religious practices, especially the precise nature of Zoroastrianism during the Achaemenid period and how it influenced imperial administration and daily life. The discovery of royal correspondence could illuminate the thinking behind crucial decisions, while administrative records might reveal how the empire managed its extraordinary diversity of cultures and languages, maintaining cohesion across an area spanning millions of square miles. The ethical dimensions of exploring these Persian royal chambers extend beyond mere preservation science to questions of cultural narrative and national pride. For the Iranian people, Persepolis represents more than an archaeological site. It's a symbol of ancient achievement and cultural continuity that predates the Islamic conquest by a millennium. Decisions about how and when to explore its sealed chambers are deeply intertwined with contemporary identity and how Iran presents itself to the world. There's growing recognition within the global archaeological community that the timing and methods of exploration should respect these cultural considerations, allowing Iranian scholars to take the lead in determining when the moment is right for investigation. This patient approach acknowledges that the greatest respect we can offer ancient civilizations is sometimes to allow their secrets to remain protected until both the technology and the cultural context are aligned to ensure their proper appreciation and preservation for future generations. While the pyramids and palaces of later civilizations capture our imagination with their scale and sophistication, there exists an even older category of sealed spaces that holds perhaps the deepest mysteries of all: the hidden chambers left behind by Europe's first farming communities during the Neolithic Revolution. These aren't the grand constructions of emperors, but the intimate, often subterranean spaces created by people who were literally inventing agriculture and settled life as they knew it. Scattered across the continent, from the stone-lined passage graves of Ireland's Boyne Valley to the elaborate hypogee carved into the Maltese limestone, these chambers represent humanity's first architectural experiments with creating permanent sacred and funerary spaces. What makes them so extraordinarily significant isn't gold or treasure in the conventional sense. but the potential they hold to answer fundamental questions about how our species transitioned from nomadic hunting and gathering to the agricultural societies that eventually built everything that followed. The contents these chambers might preserve are of a fragility that makes even the most delicate Egyptian textiles seem robust by comparison. We're discussing organic materials that have essentially vanished from the archaeological record everywhere except in these rare, perfectly sealed environments. Imagine woven baskets that held the very first harvests of domesticated wheat, wooden tools used to till the earliest fields, or leather bags containing seeds that represent the dawn of systematic agriculture. The potential for preserved plant materials is particularly exciting. Remains of ritual offerings or funeral feasts that could reveal exactly what crops these pioneering farmers grew and how they prepared them. There might be textiles made from flax that show the beginnings of weaving technology, or even the remains of clothing that would give us our first real look at how these people dressed themselves. In a chamber sealed for over 6,000 years, even pollen grains and microscopic plant residues could provide revolutionary information about the Neolithic environment and how these early agriculturalists transformed the landscape around them. The caution exercised by archaeologists around these sites borders on the reverential, born from painful experience with how quickly these precious materials can be lost. The story of Otzi the Iceman serves as both a miracle of preservation and a cautionary tale. While his body provided unprecedented information about Copper Age life, the initial recovery efforts inadvertently damaged some of his equipment and clothing, a loss that still haunts researchers decades later. For completely sealed Neolithic chambers, the risks are exponentially greater. The microclimate within these spaces has often achieved a perfect equilibrium where temperature and humidity have remained constant for millennia, creating conditions that might preserve materials that would normally decompose within years. Breaking that seal doesn't just risk damage, it guarantees it, as was tragically demonstrated when early excavations of Neolithic sites watched as wooden artifacts warped and cracked within hours of exposure to different air conditions. The archaeological community now operates with the sobering understanding that we essentially get one chance with these time capsules, and that chance had better be with the best possible technology and methodology available. This recognition has driven the development of astonishingly sophisticated micro-excavation techniques that treat archaeology more like surgery than traditional digging. When investigation of these chambers does proceed, it typically involves international teams working in controlled laboratory-like conditions, even when working on-site. Researchers might erect temporary structures around the entrance to maintain stable environmental conditions, with airlocks and humidity controls that would look more at home in a semiconductor factory than an archaeological dig. The excavation itself proceeds millimeter by millimeter using dental tools, fine brushes, and specially designed miniature vacuum systems to remove soil particles. Every speck of dirt is carefully sieved and analyzed for microscopic evidence, while 3D laser scanners document the exact position of every find down to the smallest seed or bead. The chamber's atmosphere is constantly monitored for changes in temperature, humidity, and gas composition, with any excavation immediately halted if parameters drift outside predetermined safe ranges. The technological arsenal brought to these investigations would astonish archaeologists from even a generation ago. Ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography help map chambers before any physical intervention, revealing the size and layout of spaces and potentially identifying concentrations of organic materials. Endoscopic cameras mounted on flexible fiberscopes can be threaded through existing cracks or tiny boreholes to glimpse what lies within without significantly disturbing the internal environment. Perhaps most revolutionary is the development of biochemical analysis techniques that can extract information from the chambers without removing anything at all. Air samples analyzed through chromatography, mass spectrometry can detect the chemical signatures of decayed materials, revealing the presence of wood, leather, or specific plant types that have long since decomposed into molecular traces. Soil microsampling around potential entry points can yield ancient DNA from plants, animals, or even humans who interacted with the space thousands of years ago. The collaborative nature of this research reflects its global significance. Neolithic chambers in France might be studied by teams that include German specialists in organic preservation, British experts in micromorphology, and Danish researchers specializing in ancient DNA analysis. This international approach ensures that the rarest opportunities to study these sites benefit from the world's collective expertise rather than being limited by national boundaries or individual institutional capabilities. The sharing of methodologies and findings across borders has created a rapid acceleration in our understanding of Neolithic societies, with each carefully conducted investigation building on the lessons learned from previous ones. This collective wisdom has led to the growing consensus that in many cases, the most responsible approach is to thoroughly document chambers using non-invasive methods and then leave them sealed for future generations with even better technologies. A philosophy that recognizes that our current methods, however advanced, will likely seem crude to archaeologists a century from now. What ultimately makes these Neolithic chambers so worth protecting is their potential to illuminate the most fundamental transition in human history. The moment we stopped simply taking what nature provided and began actively shaping our environment through agriculture. Within their silent darkness might lie the answers to questions that have puzzled researchers for generations. Did agriculture spread through migration of farmers or through adoption of ideas by local hunter-gatherers? How did social organization change when people began living in permanent settlements? What spiritual beliefs emerged when human existence became tied to the seasonal cycles of crops rather than the movements of wild game? Each sealed chamber represents a unique opportunity to move beyond the stone tools and pottery fragments that usually survive from this period and access the complete material world of these revolutionary innovators. They remind us that sometimes the most profound mysteries aren't hidden in gold-filled tombs, but in the humble, earth-bound spaces where ordinary people literally planted the seeds of civilization as we know it. Beneath the soaring Gothic arches and massive stone foundations of Europe's great cathedrals lies a hidden world of sealed crypts that have guarded their secrets for nearly a millennium. These aren't merely underground storage spaces but sacred time capsules from the High Middle Ages, potentially containing the remains of saints, the treasured relics they left behind, or even priceless illuminated manuscripts created by monastic scribes working by candlelight. The spiritual significance of these spaces cannot be overstated. They were designed as eternal resting places where the earthly and divine realms intersected, often built directly beneath altars where Mass was celebrated for centuries. For the Church, these are not archaeological sites but active places of worship and veneration, where the physical remains of holy figures are believed to maintain a connection to the community of saints that transcends death itself. This living religious context creates a fundamentally different framework for exploration than secular archaeological sites, one where spiritual values often take precedence over historical curiosity. The practical challenges of accessing these crypts present a formidable array of obstacles that would daunt even the most determined researcher. Medieval construction techniques, while astonishingly durable, created structures that have settled into delicate equilibrium over centuries. The massive weight of cathedral foundations above means that any disturbance to supporting walls or pillars could potentially trigger shifts in the entire structure above. At Chartres Cathedral in France, for instance, the crypt network extends beneath the entire nave, with its stability crucial to supporting the famous soaring structure above. Beyond structural concerns, there's the constant battle against groundwater infiltration. Many of these crypts exist in a perpetual state of dampness that has actually helped preserve organic materials by creating anaerobic conditions, but which also means that any change in drainage patterns could cause flooding or accelerate decay. The experience at Winchester Cathedral serves as a cautionary tale, where 20th century efforts to stabilize the building required divers to work in flooded crypts to install new foundations, a massive undertaking that demonstrated just how complex medieval engineering can be to intervene with. What might be lost in these sealed spaces represents a potential treasure trove of medieval culture that goes far beyond the obvious religious artifacts. While the possibility of finding saintly relics or beautifully crafted reliquaries captures the imagination, equally exciting is the potential for discovering complete liturgical texts, administrative records from monastic scriptoria, or even personal items belonging to significant historical figures. The sealed crypt at Canterbury Cathedral, for example, is believed to potentially contain documents related to Thomas Becket's martyrdom or artifacts from the pilgrimage tradition that made the site famous throughout medieval Europe. At Santiago de Compostela in Spain, unexplored chambers beneath the cathedral might hold evidence of the early cult of St. James and how the pilgrimage route influenced the cultural exchange that flowed across Europe during the Middle Ages. These materials could provide first-hand accounts of how medieval people experienced faith, organized their societies, and understood their place in the cosmos, perspectives that are often missing from the formal historical records that have survived. The ethical considerations surrounding these crypts extend beyond mere preservation science to questions of religious respect and human dignity. For the Catholic Church and other Christian denominations, these are not abandoned spaces but active burial sites that contain the remains of individuals who were often considered holy during their lifetimes. The Church's Code of Canon Law contains specific provisions regarding the disturbance of human remains, requiring that any such activity demonstrate compelling necessity and be conducted with appropriate reverence. There's also the consideration that many of these crypts contain the remains of individuals who specifically requested burial in these sacred spaces as their final resting place, and their wishes deserve respect even centuries later. This perspective has led to protocols that favor investigation only when necessary for structural stabilization or when there's clear risk of damage from environmental factors, rather than for purely historical or academic purposes. The approach emphasizes that these are not merely historical resources, but places where living religious tradition connects directly with centuries of continuous worship and devotion. Modern research methods have evolved to meet these complex challenges with remarkable sensitivity and technological sophistication. Ground-penetrating radar has been deployed beneath cathedral floors from York Minster to Cologne Cathedral, mapping subsurface features without disturbing so much as a single stone. Thermal imaging cameras can detect subtle temperature variations that might indicate voids or different construction materials behind solid walls. Laser scanning creates incredibly detailed three-dimensional models of known crypt spaces, allowing researchers to study architectural features and potential sealed openings without any physical contact. Perhaps most impressive are the developments in micro-environmental monitoring, where researchers drill tiny boreholes, sometimes just millimeters wide, to insert sensors that can measure temperature, humidity, and even air composition within sealed chambers without significantly altering their internal conditions. These approaches allow for significant scientific inquiry while fully respecting the religious and ethical considerations that make these spaces unique. The collaborative nature of this research represents a model of how different institutions can work together despite sometimes competing priorities. Projects like the investigation of the sealed crypts at Westminster Abbey involve teams that include structural engineers from universities, conservation specialists from organizations like English Heritage, and representatives from the Church of England's Archaeological Advisory Board. This multidisciplinary approach ensures that any investigation considers structural stability, preservation science, historical significance, and religious sensibilities in equal measure. The decision-making process typically involves extensive consultation and often requires approval from multiple levels of church governance as well as secular preservation authorities, creating a careful balancing act that prioritizes caution over curiosity. This measured approach recognizes that these sealed crypts have maintained their secrets for centuries, and they can certainly wait a few more decades until the perfect combination of technology, methodology, and ethical framework emerges to ensure they're approached with the reverence and care they deserve. Scattered across the eastern woodlands and the river valleys of North America, the ancient burial mounds built by the Hopewell, Adena, and Mississippian cultures represent a profound and often misunderstood chapter in human history. These earthen structures, some taking the form of massive geometric shapes or towering serpents silhouetted against the sky, are far more than simple piles of dirt. They are carefully engineered monuments, often containing complex internal architectures of sealed chambers and passageways. Within these hidden spaces, protected by layers of clay and stone, lies the potential for extraordinary discoveries: intricately carved ritual objects, textiles woven with patterns that hold cosmological significance, and the carefully arranged burials of important individuals accompanied by artifacts meant to serve them in the afterlife. The possibility of finding such materials, perfectly preserved in the stable environments of these sealed spaces, offers an unparalleled opportunity to understand the spiritual beliefs, social structures, and artistic achievements of sophisticated civilizations that flourished long before European contact. The approach to these sites today is fundamentally different from the archaeology of the past, guided not by a mandate for excavation, but by a profound ethical revolution embodied in legislation like the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. This federal law, enacted in 1990, fundamentally changed the relationship between archaeologists and Native American tribes by recognizing the rights of descendant communities to their ancestral remains and cultural items. Where previous generations of researchers might have seen these mounds primarily as sources of data, modern practice acknowledges them first as sacred burial sites and places of deep cultural continuity. This means that the question of whether to open a sealed chamber is not solely an archaeological decision, but a collaborative process that involves tribal historic preservation officers, elders, and cultural leaders. Their perspectives are not merely considered, they are essential, often determining that the spiritual and cultural integrity of the site is more valuable than any information that might be gained through physical intrusion. This collaborative framework has led to the prioritization of non-invasive technologies that allow researchers to learn about these spaces without disturbing them. Ground-penetrating radar is frequently deployed to map the internal structure of mounds, revealing the outlines of chambers, logs used in construction, and anomalies that suggest the presence of artifacts. Resistance meters measure electrical currents passed through the soil to distinguish between different types of fill and potential voids within the mound. Perhaps most significantly, LiDAR technology laser scanning from aircraft has been revolutionary, stripping away forest cover to reveal the full extent of mound complexes and their relationships to the surrounding landscape, showing that many of these structures were part of larger ceremonial centers aligned with celestial events. These methods provide a wealth of information about the construction sequences, internal features, and potential contents of mounds, all while leaving the sacred seals intact. The caution exercised around these sites stems from a painful history of extraction and disrespect, where ancestral remains and funerary objects were removed from their resting places and placed in museum collections, often without the consent of descendant communities. This legacy of harm has created a deep-seated skepticism toward archaeological excavation, making trust building an essential component of any modern research. When investigation does proceed with tribal support, it often follows specific cultural protocols. These might include ceremonies conducted before any work begins, the presence of tribal monitors throughout the process to ensure respectful treatment of any materials encountered, and clear agreements about how any discovered items will be handled, studied, and ultimately cared for. The goal is no longer simply to extract objects for study, but to understand the site within its full cultural context, respecting the intentions of the people who built it and the beliefs of those who still feel connected to it today. What makes these sealed chambers so scientifically valuable is precisely what makes them so sensitive: their potential to contain organic materials that have rarely survived elsewhere. The stable, protected environments within mounds can preserve things that normally perish centuries: feathers from headdresses, leather pouches holding medicinal plants, wooden carvings, and food offerings. A single sealed chamber could provide a complete snapshot of material culture that would radically expand our understanding of ancient technologies, trade networks, and daily life. However, this very potential necessitates extreme caution, as exposure to modern air, light, and microbial life could cause these priceless materials to deteriorate within moments. This creates a powerful argument for patience. By leaving these chambers sealed, we preserve them for future generations who will undoubtedly have even more sophisticated technologies for non-destructive analysis, ensuring that the stories contained within can be heard without being destroyed in the telling. The preservation of these mounds and their sealed chambers is about more than protecting the past. It is about supporting the cultural vitality of Native American communities in the present. These sites are active places of cultural memory, spiritual connection, and identity formation. For many indigenous people, the ancestors buried within these mounds are not anonymous figures from a distant past, but part of a continuous lineage that informs contemporary life. The decision to leave a chamber sealed is often a declaration that some knowledge is meant to remain sacred rather than become scientific, that the mystery itself has value, and that respecting the wishes of the ancestors is a higher priority than satisfying modern curiosity. This perspective challenges conventional archaeology to expand its definition of significance, recognizing that the cultural meaning of a place and its importance to living communities can be just as important as the data it might contain. In this careful, respectful approach, we find a new model for exploring history, one that listens as much as it looks and that values wisdom as highly as it values discovery. This careful, methodical approach to ancient sealed chambers didn't emerge from abstract principles, but was forged through painful experience and heartbreaking losses. The history of archaeology is littered with stories of priceless artifacts turning to dust within hours of exposure, of vibrant wall paintings fading before researchers' eyes, and of entire historical contexts being destroyed in the rush to see what lay behind sealed doors. Perhaps the most famous cautionary tale comes from the tomb of Tutankhamun itself, where Howard Carter's magnificent discovery was somewhat marred by the rapid deterioration of organic materials that had been perfectly preserved for over 3,000 years. The beautiful floral wreaths placed on the young king's coffin, still holding their shape and color when first seen, crumbled to dust within days of exposure to the outside air. This pattern repeated itself across countless archaeological sites throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, creating a legacy of loss that fundamentally reshaped how researchers approach sealed environments today. Modern archaeology has evolved into a discipline that values patience as highly as discovery, recognizing that sometimes the most responsible action is knowing when not to dig. This philosophy of minimal intervention acknowledges that future technologies will likely provide methods of investigation we can scarcely imagine today. Non-invasive imaging that can read closed scrolls, environmental sensors that can analyze microscopic air samples from sealed chambers, or even quantum technologies that might allow us to see through solid matter without any physical intrusion. By leaving these time capsules intact, we're essentially preserving them for future generations of scientists who will have tools and methodologies that make our current approaches seem crude by comparison. This long-term perspective represents a significant maturation of the archaeological mindset, shifting from a focus on what we can discover now to what we might be able to learn with proper patience and respect for the limitations of our current technology. The technical challenges alone provide compelling reasons for caution, beginning with the complex issue of structural integrity. Many sealed chambers exist within ancient constructions that have maintained their stability through careful balance and environmental consistency. The Great Pyramid's hidden voids, for instance, aren't just empty spaces but integral parts of a 4,500-year-old engineering marvel that has survived earthquakes, climate changes, and human intervention. Any attempt to physically access these spaces could potentially disrupt the delicate equilibrium that has preserved the structure for millennia, risking damage not just to the chamber itself but to the entire monument. Similarly, the sealed crypts beneath Mayan temples exist in precarious balance with their surrounding environment, where the humid tropical conditions have created both exceptional preservation challenges and structural vulnerabilities that make invasive exploration potentially catastrophic. Environmental control presents another layer of complexity that guides the cautious approach. Many sealed chambers maintain unique microclimates that have preserved organic materials for centuries, specific levels of humidity, temperature, and atmospheric composition that create ideal conditions for preservation. The moment these environments are breached, the clock starts ticking on rapid deterioration processes that even the most advanced conservation techniques struggle to control. This isn't merely theoretical concern. At numerous sites from Herculaneum to Chinese imperial tombs, well-intentioned excavations have watched helplessly as wooden artifacts warped, textiles disintegrated, and pigments faded within hours of exposure to different atmospheric conditions. The irreversible nature of these changes means that archaeologists essentially get one chance to do things correctly, and the potential for permanent loss outweighs the temptation of immediate discovery. Perhaps the most significant evolution in archaeological thinking has been the growing recognition of ethical considerations that extend beyond mere preservation science. There's increasing awareness that these sealed spaces aren't just historical resources but often sacred burial sites, cultural treasures, or places of spiritual significance to descendant communities. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act in the United States established important protocols for respecting indigenous rights regarding ancestral remains and cultural items, setting a standard that has influenced global archaeological practice. Similarly, when dealing with sites like the sealed chambers beneath St. Peter's Basilica or the hidden spaces within Buddhist cave temples, researchers must balance scientific curiosity with respect for living religious traditions and the beliefs of communities who maintain spiritual connections to these places. This ethical framework acknowledges that some knowledge might be meant to remain sacred rather than become scientific data, and that respecting cultural values is as important as advancing historical understanding. This comprehensive approach to sealed chambers represents archaeology at its most sophisticated and humble, a discipline that has learned to value what it doesn't yet know as highly as what it has discovered. By embracing caution and patience, researchers are ensuring that these extraordinary time capsules remain available for future generations who will approach them with better technologies, more refined methodologies, and perhaps deeper wisdom about how to balance our hunger for knowledge with our responsibility to preserve the mystery and majesty of the human story. These 21 sealed chambers scattered across our planet represent far more than just archaeological puzzles waiting to be solved. They embody a profound shift in how humanity approaches its own history. We've moved from an era of treasure hunting and rushed excavation to a thoughtful discipline that values preservation as highly as discovery. Each unopened door, whether in the deserts of Egypt or the jungles of Central America, stands as a testament to both ancient ingenuity and modern wisdom. The sophisticated construction methods that have kept these spaces intact for millennia speak volumes about the civilizations that created them, while our collective decision to leave them undisturbed demonstrates a maturity that previous generations of explorers might find surprising. This isn't about a lack of curiosity, but rather a deeper, more profound form of respect, one that recognizes that some mysteries deserve to be preserved until we can solve them without causing destruction in the process. What makes this evolution in archaeological practice so remarkable is how it balances our dual human impulses, the burning desire to know what lies hidden, and the wisdom to understand that some knowledge is better preserved for future generations. The sealed chambers we've explored represent potential breakthroughs in our understanding of ancient technologies, lost languages, and cultural practices that vanished without complete documentation. Yet the scientific community has largely resisted the temptation to break through these barriers, recognizing that the methods of yesterday often caused irreversible damage. The memory of vibrant wall paintings fading within hours of exposure, or organic materials crumbling to dust after centuries of perfect preservation, haunts the archaeological conscience and guides current protocols. This caution isn't timidness. It's the application of hard-won experience that has taught us the true value of what we might lose in our rush to discover what we might gain. The technological revolution happening right now offers the most compelling reason for this patient approach. We're developing capabilities that would seem like magic to archaeologists from just a generation ago. Advanced imaging techniques using muons from cosmic rays can peer through solid stone, creating detailed three-dimensional maps of hidden voids without disturbing a single atom. Sophisticated sensors can analyze the air seeping through microscopic fissures, detecting the chemical signatures of materials hidden within sealed environments. Artificial intelligence algorithms can reconstruct fragmented texts from non-invasive scans, potentially allowing us to read entire libraries without unrolling a single carbonized scroll. These technologies are advancing at an exponential pace, suggesting that within a few decades, we might be able to virtually explore these spaces with fidelity approaching physical examination, all without compromising their preservation. The sealed chambers have waited thousands of years. They can certainly wait a few more decades for technologies that will allow us to study them without destruction. This careful approach also represents a significant ethical evolution in how we treat the cultural heritage of humanity. There's growing recognition that these sites don't belong exclusively to the present generation of researchers, but to all future humanity as well. The sealed chambers in Native American burial mounds, for instance, are approached with respect for the beliefs of descendant communities who see them as sacred spaces rather than merely archaeological resources. The hidden chambers beneath cathedrals and temples are understood as active places of worship and spiritual significance, not just historical curiosities. This collaborative, respectful approach acknowledges that the value of these spaces isn't measured solely in what we can learn from them, but in their continued existence as places of mystery, cultural memory, and connection to the human story across time. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of these sealed chambers is how they continue to inspire wonder and curiosity while simultaneously teaching patience and respect. They stand as permanent reminders that our understanding of history is always evolving, and that the most profound discoveries often come not from rushing forward but from knowing when to pause and appreciate what we don't yet know. These unopened doors invite us to imagine what might lie beyond them while also inviting us to consider why they were sealed in the first place. They challenge us to develop better questions, not just better tools for breaking down barriers. In this balance between curiosity and restraint, we find the true heart of modern archaeology, a discipline that has grown from adventure into stewardship, from extraction into preservation, and from simple answers into deeper, more meaningful questions about who we are and where we come